Hello, I'm R.L. Stine. I write the Goosebumps books. In a few minutes, you're going to watch my favorite booktuber read all 62 books in my original Goosebumps series. That's a scary challenge. What's so scary about that? You're about to find out. Viewer beware, you're in for a scare. You know, I think I nailed it. First time. September hasn't even started yet and I already feel behind. Hey everyone, welcome back to How to Train Your Gavin. This might end up being the longest video I've ever done in my entire life. I don't know, because this is a little bit of an ambitious project, and it is a project that I've been really wanting to do since I started BookTube 2.5 years ago. Had to think about that there. I've probably lost my mind, but I have decided that I would love to try and read all 62 original Goosebumps books in the month of September. Sounded like a fun challenge when I first thought of doing it, and now that it's, 30 minutes until September 1st? I'm regretting it a little bit. As you can see behind me, I own all 62 original books, and I am in the UK. So I have these covers. These are the covers I will be showing you. So if you find the UK covers ugly. Anyway, starting this off, yes, I want to read all 62 original Goosebumps books by R.L. Stine. They're little horror stories that will give you goosebumps. And honestly, the Goosebumps books were my life when I was a kid. I was obsessed. My primary school English teacher, whose name I have now forgotten, I'm so sorry, used to read out a chapter or two every form class of a Goosebumps book. I remember one of them actually being like one of the worst books of the series, but I still enjoyed it so much because he was the one reading it. And I think that book was Chicken. We did used to read all sorts of them, and he would do voices and he would kind of act them out a little bit, and he was just phenomenal. I genuinely don't know what's happened to him since. He might be dead, I don't know. Hopefully not. But yeah, my mum would take me into Woolworths and they would be like £2.99. Oh, well, that was £3.99. Oh my god, the price went up. You can't get good books that price these days. They're a bit like Freddos, you know how the price has gone up like so dramatically. They used to be like 10 pence and now they're like 15 quid, I don't know. But I do own them all, so they're there and ready to go. I have read most of them. I think maybe I didn't read a few of them. Some of them sound absolutely shite, not gonna lie. But I still want to read all of them, starting from the beginning. Now, also, the UK have a bit of a different running order from America, and maybe some other overseas countries have like different running orders for the series. So I will be going in order of the UK releases. I will be starting off with the very first one, Welcome to Dead House. I also want to point out that when I was a kid, I used to put a big sticker on the front of my books and write my name on it. For some reason, I wrote Gavin Hetherington Maths. I don't know why I wrote maths on there. Why the hell did I write maths? But yeah, there are a few of these. Ignore that. I used to deface my books all the time. And I don't know why, but I ticked every single line I read as well. So when I finished the line, I'd tick it. Look, I grew out of it, okay? So the rundown of this video is that I will read each and every single Goosebumps book in order. I will talk about each one. I don't know how long I will talk about each one. Hopefully I don't waffle on. So I'm going to try and keep my thoughts narrow as possible, but it might not happen and this might be 5 hours, I don't know. This is the Goosebumps reading vlog, the Zack Snyder cut. I'm going to aim to read maybe 2 or 3 Goosebumps books a day. I think that's totally doable. The Goosebumps books are not really that long, but I do work part-time, I do a lot of videos, I do a lot of live shows, I do a lot of this, a lot of that. So my time is stretched quite thin. So let's see how we get on, because I'm expecting it to go terribly wrong, but I'm here for it. I also want to say before starting as well that Ali from Hardback Hoarder is also doing this challenge. We unexpectedly decided to do it, and then when we realized each of us were doing it, we were like, well, you'll read all the Goosebumps books? And like, you'll read all the Goosebumps books? Like, yeah. So we're going to see if we can try and tackle it together. We're also going to see if we can beat each other to reading them all. So Ali, you're going down. I might end up watching some of the Goosebumps TV show because I also used to be obsessed with the Goosebumps TV show. I had loads of the VHS tapes, especially the Haunted Mask one. The Haunted Mask one was my absolute favourite. Actually, that gives me a good idea. Why don't I do some predictions? I do think I'm gonna really get annoyed with a lot of the Goosebumps books with all of the 4 cliffhangers because I read the Fear Street books recently, or at least the first 4, and honestly they annoyed me to death. But I did have a good time reading them. The 4 cliffhangers got annoying characters I just hated. So my prediction is I'm gonna get so annoyed by book 4. My previous favourites, I do have a top 10 Goosebumps books video, which I will link up there and down below, and those were my top 10 from a couple of years ago, but I hadn't reread or read any of them since being a child. So those books could change dramatically. From what I remember, like The Haunted Mask, A Night in Terror Tower, One Day at Horrorland, those were my favourites. So let's see if I will still enjoy them. My nostalgia is going to be through the roof in this video, so whew, cannot wait. It is midnight soon. I'm not going to start a book then, even though it's the perfect time, because I have a lot of editing to do. And I might end up just staying all night because I also have work in the morning. So I might see if I can start at least the first book tomorrow. We're off to a great start. Let's see how quickly it takes for me to lose my sanity. I'm hoping by the 1 hour and 50-minute mark, because then I feel like I'll hook you. I'll hook you in. So, here we go. Viewer beware, you're in for a scare. So I wanted to start this vlog off so you know the kind of town I live in. Some of it's run down, there are creepy corners in it, but I think that would make this a pretty good town for a Goosebumps book. I forgot to mention before that there are 7,549 pages in the Goosebumps series that I have to read in this vlog. There will be spoilers for each of the books, including twists and turns and things that I enjoyed from each of them and things I didn't enjoy so much from each of them. So bear that in mind going forward that I will be talking spoilers. And now, let's start discussing Goosebumps. Welcome to Dead House is actually a really good start to the Goosebumps book series. I do want to say as well that when I said that I hadn't read any of the Goosebumps books as an adult, I kind of lied. I actually reread this one a couple of years ago for Believathon, and I remember liking it back then too. A lot of the twists and plot points that happened in the book, I had totally forgotten about, but they came flooding back as soon as I was reading them. I was like, yes, of course that happened. Yes, of course that's the twist that happened. It all started coming back to me, and the same thing happened again when I was reading this. I must have forgotten like a lot of stuff during the time of reading this 2 years ago to now, and it all just came flooding back. So I think when I read other ones as well, that's gonna happen. So Welcome to Dead House follows Amanda and Josh and their brother and sister. In fact, isn't almost every Goosebumps book about a brother and sister? I think, well, at least 90% of them are. And they moved to a new town called Dark Falls, and not gonna lie, like, they were skeptical about moving, and I don't blame them. If my father said, look guys, we're moving to Dark Falls, I'd be like, Dad, I'm cutting you off right there. Turns out the kids were right to be skeptical about moving there, because they move into this house where the kids end up meeting lots of different kids in the neighborhood who say, I used to live in your house, I used to live in your house. Honestly, that gave me chills. That gave me goosebumps. I mean, I'd forgotten about the twist as I was reading this, but it came back to me when I read the twist. I just thought, like, why did they move from this house? What's so wrong with this house? But then it finally clicked on because, you know, I remembered the twist. So let's talk about characters first. I kind of liked Amanda and Josh. I thought they had good sibling banter. Josh was a little hard to like at first. I could see why he was very reluctant to go in the house. But it got to a point where me as an adult was scolding Josh, being like, look, get in the house. Like, he was starting to annoy me. But, you know, I like them. I like them a lot. And I think it really added to the atmosphere, because I thought the atmosphere in this was pitch perfect because it was a little bit gothic, and I love me some gothic literature, but I was a little bit surprised by how well written some of the tense scenes were. I will say, though, that, oh my god, there were a couple of times where I got so fed up with the fake cliffhangers and just the trying to scare you, but like, it was just too forced. And I am 3 books in. I'm going to say, when a character goes, gotcha, it does something to me. It gets me angry, okay? So it happened in this. There was a really tense cliffhanger, and then in the very next page, at the start of the next chapter, it's a character going, gotcha. And it happened again and again. Okay, right, I'm not going to talk about too much about that because I was expecting it, but it's still so annoying. But most of those cliffhangers were because of Josh, and they should rename this book to It Was Josh, because that's all Amanda says. It was Josh. Kiara Strange Noise? It was Josh. Creepy Hand Touches Me? It was Josh. Shadow Down the Hole? It was Josh. Didn't flush the toilet after having a shit?
Well, it was fucking one of yes.
It was Josh.
Disgusting!
It was getting so repetitive and it was annoying me. So writing wise, I mean, it wasn't perfectly written or anything, but it was still a really fun time. And again, like, it was very odd. The kids in the neighborhood were acting very odd, which I guess I'll just talk about the main plot point of this then being that everyone is pretty much like a zombie kind of thing, because there was this mysterious gas that had leaked like, years and years and years ago, and it caused like everyone to die and turn into these like zombie things. And I love that kind of twist. I thought it was really well done. The whole story about how the kind of zombie kids had lured them there, like there was no great uncle who, how did I say lo? Oh my god, I hate that word. I don't even know how to say it. Lured? I'm going to move on. The way they got them to the house by sending this letter from a fake dead uncle, like, that was really interesting, because then it turned out that the kids were doing this because they needed fresh blood to sustain them. They need a freshly killed person every single year, and that's so sinister and creepy. And after reading the Fear Street books as well by R.L. Stine recently, like, the first four anyway, they were mostly cop-outs, but this was like full-on kind of supernatural horror. And then when we have the final climax with the light going on the kids and stuff, and their flesh like falls off, like, I thought, wow, like, this is like a children's book and it's quite graphic. So I really enjoyed that. I thought that was really good. And then the ending as well, when the cycle just seems to keep on going and going, that was honestly so interesting. So we are off to a fantastic start with the Goosebumps books. I would give this 4 stars. So I'm going to keep track of all of the books and what I rated them, and do one big ranking at the end, or maybe in a separate video after this vlog. Most likely a separate video now I think about it. So moving on to Say Cheese and Die then. Unfortunately, I don't have a horrible nasty looking sticker on the cover of this one, not including the moments with the character going gotcha. This was also another fantastic one. Like, I think I preferred this one over Welcome to Dead House. The premise of this is so sinister and creepy, and I forgot just how creepy it went. So in this one, we follow Greg, and with his friends, they go into this weird old house and they find a camera. Greg ends up taking a photo of his friend Michael, and then a couple of seconds later, Michael falls from the banister. And when the photo develops, it shows Michael falling, whereas when Greg took the photo, Michael wasn't. So this camera is predicting the future, and the future is very grim. So we also have, when Greg's dad gets a new car, he takes a photo of it, the car is totaled, and then later on, Greg's father is in an accident in this car, and it's like, this is some weird kind of Final Destination kind of thing. So what's going on with this camera? Like, why is this happening? We have a whole twist with this camera about the owner of the camera being like this mad scientist who created this camera, and it got a curse placed on it. You know what, it's a little hard to follow, not gonna lie. But there is this whole confrontation with Spidey and Greg, and the camera ends up getting, kept in the house. We end up with the 2 bullies from earlier in the story finding this camera and taking a selfie and waiting for the photo to develop. So again, the cycle will continue, just like in Welcome to Dead House. So I, again, love the plot of this one. It didn't have as much horrific imagery as the first one, only because with the first one, we had some gothic vibes to it. We had the flesh of the dead children, like the zombies and stuff, coming off them. So there wasn't anything really that bad. However, it was extremely sinister. Like, we had a character disappear after taking a photo of her, well, a couple of times, and she didn't appear in any of the photos. Like, that was so interesting. So I wasn't sure how it was going to resolve, and actually thought it had a really good resolve. It had a good resolution, that's it. Because Spidey, Greg ends up taking a photo of him and he dies of fright. And that was like a really good end to that kind of like villain and oh, it's over now kind of moment, but it's not really over because of the bullies coming along. But I felt like that was a really good way to do it because, I know sometimes R.L. Stine can cop out of a climax as well, but I thought this was a really good one. It was probably a little bit too easy that, just ripping up a photo can undo what happened in the photo. So like Sherry, for instance, she comes back after Greg rips the photo up, which is fine, it's fine. It was just a little bit too easy for my liking. But I guess these books are so short that, something has to happen quick, there's no beating around the bush in a Goosebumps book. But I did enjoy it, and I did think it was better than Welcome to Dead House. So Say Cheese and Die is getting 4 stars as well. So 2 very strong books in the first 2 Goosebumps series. Stay Out of the Basement has a bit of a special place in my heart, but mainly the TV show episode of Stay Out of the Basement. You know what, I could pick the main characters out of a lineup if I had to. Like, that episode is ingrained in my head, and the actors, I've never seen them since in anything I've ever watched, but I remember their faces and I would definitely be able to pick them out of a lineup. I watch this on VHS tape all the time, and you know what, it's pretty cool how almost faithful it is to the TV show episode. Hang on, I need to move my leg. Oh, I'm very uncomfortable. So this one follows Margaret and Casey, they are brother and sister, and they live with their mum and dad, and their dad is a botanist. Their mum ends up going away for a bit, and Margaret and Casey are left alone with their dad, and their dad is telling them to stay out of the basement. It is very hard for me to feel any kind of tension in these books because I know most of them so well, and I've seen the TV show episodes. I think I've seen all of them. But there were still a few surprises in this. Like, the kind of climax is a little bit different, and I'm kind of glad about that. So I did quite enjoy the characters, however, something really annoyed me, and I thought it was really bloody awful, and it was the fact that Margaret, the main character, was being called Fatso. It's just like, I don't understand why she was being called it, because it says here, Margaret hated the name Fatso even more than she hated Princess. People in her family jokingly called her Fatso because she was so thin, like her father. Why? Never call anyone Fatso ever, like, that's just rude. But I don't understand that. Like, can somebody explain why that paragraph exists? So yeah, that threw me. That was in chapter 1. Moving on from that, I did quite like Casey and Margaret a bit. Casey, actually, I didn't like all that much, to be honest. Now I think about it, no. It was fine, but I did prefer Margaret as a character. And I did feel the fear that they had for their dad. Like, I totally get the whole being scared of a parent thing. Like, that's quite terrifying when you think you can't even trust your own dad. Let's get a little personal here, but I mean, there were times when I was a kid when I didn't know if I could trust my dad, you know? That hit me here. But other than that, like, I felt like the plot wasn't as strong as the first two, especially since staying out the basement, there's loads of plants down there. Fair enough. It's not really that terrifying. I mean, it is terrifying, you know, the whole premise of the whole body snatcher scenario that happens with Dr. Brewer being replaced by a plant human. That is a little bit terrifying. But just overall, not really something that elicited goosebumps. There were some tense moments when they would sneak into the basement and then their dad would come home, so they had to like leave, and then Casey left his jumper down there or something like that, and you know, just like, why'd you do that? But then they started like, I need to go down and get it, and Margaret's like, no, don't go down and get it, Dad's right there. And then they're talking for about 5 minutes, and during that entire time Casey could have went down and got the bloody jumper. I mean, fortunately a neighbour starts talking to their dad, so then he does go down and get it, but it's just like, they wasted all that time talking about nothing. But then, you know, the dad also forces them to eat plant food, which was really gross. Yeah, it was shifty, it was good to follow, good to read, but yeah, I just wasn't really scared by it at any point. I will say though, I think one of the best parts was the climax when Margaret had to decide which one was her dad, because she does find her real dad tied up in the closet, and then there's that whole I'm your father, no, I'm your father kind of thing going on, and then Margaret has this axe, and then she gives it to her real dad, and her real dad cuts the fake dad down. But it's kind of horrific because it does slice him in half. So the capitalist Dr. Brewer, which is her dad, picked up the axe, took 3 steps forward, pulled the axe back, swung with all his might. The Dr. Brewer in the cap opened his mouth wide and uttered a hushed cry of alarm. The cry was choked off as the axe cut easily through his body, slicing him in 2. That's horrific. It does turn out that he has like this stem for a body, which I guess is a little bit better than a human body being sliced in half. But it's like that visual of an axe cutting through a human, even though he's really a plant, but like he looks like a human. You know, it's just, that is so graphic. And you know, that's good. That's good. I was like, yes. Yes, R.L. Stine, yes, do it. So I like that. I like the climax. That was good. But overall, I wasn't vibing with this one as much as I wanted to. I genuinely thought that this would be one of my favourites because I have such fond memories of the TV show episode, and I'm pretty sure it was probably one of my favourites back then. Now as an adult, I just wasn't as interested throughout. It didn't hold my attention. So for this one, I'm going to give it 3 stars, which is still a fantastic rating. Like, it wasn't bad, but there were little annoyances, and yeah, we do get the whole gotcha thing again. This is going to be very fun reading the next 59 books in this series, isn't it? Because every single book is going to have a gotcha moment. Every single one. It's September 7th and I'm 6 books behind. So far, you can't even really see. So far, I have read 8 of the Goosebumps books and I'm about to tell you more of what I thought of them in just a second. Yes, this is my kind of little check-in. I have already told you about the first 3 Goosebumps books. Now I need to tell you about books 4 through 8. I'm so behind. I'm going to see if I can try and get 2 more read today, which will be great. But I will say that even though it looks like I'm stressing out, I'm enjoying my reading experience of these books so much. They're both like really entertaining me and paying me off. So it's great. I love the balance. I really do love the balance. So the Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, I need to keep in this very short window of light because if I go like this, it's too bright, and if I go like this, you can't see the book. So if I'm staying very still, it's because of that reason. I thought this had one of the best starts of the series so far. It was, I mean, actually, how did it start? Mainly because the first chapter ends with like a sort of prophetic ending. The narrator tells you what's gonna happen and it sounds really sinister. So little did I know that in a few days Mum and Dad will be gone and I will be deep inside the pyramid we were staring at. Not just inside it, but trapped inside it, sealed inside it, probably forever. And I was just like, oh, my intrigue is so high on this one. And I love anything to do with Egypt and mummies. And I was eating this up. Atmosphere was great. I loved the setting. Obviously it wasn't described brilliantly. Also, does anybody else get the camel joke in chapter 1? Because I didn't. Do you know how to get down from a camel? You don't get down from a camel, you get down from a duck. I don't get that joke. It says, I know it's a very old joke, but my dad and I never get tired of it. What's the joke? I'm totally missing something. So we have Gabe, who is like this character who's, well, trying a little bit hard to be funny when he's not. But Gabe is then left with Uncle Ben and his cousin Sorry. And Gabe does not get on with Sorry. Like, they have this competitiveness between them. Saying that though, there is a competitiveness with a lot of the main characters in the Goosebumps books. And usually it is like brother and sister, so it was nice to see the kind of cousin rivalry between them. That was pretty cool. And I wasn't sure what to think of Sorry at first, but at the same time I wasn't sure what to think of Gabe at first. So I was waiting for them to, I don't know, like change, and they do, and I like their development and how Sorry and Gabe end up getting a bit closer after their horrible encounter in Egypt. I can't even remember reading this book as a kid, and I remember reading Return of the Mummy, so I don't know if I did read, I'm sure I did, it was one of the early ones, so I'm sure I did, but I'd forgotten it, so I was suspecting Uncle Ben to be sketchy. Not gonna lie, I think it was probably because we had those whole gotcha kind of moments with Uncle Ben, and he would fake the scares with Gabe and try to scare him, because every single Goosebumps book seems to have a character who loves scaring someone else. So I just thought Uncle Ben would be behind it. Maybe Sorry would be like a co-conspirator with him or something, but it turns out to be wrong. There is actually someone called Ahmed who tries to, well, kill the kids actually, which is one thing I liked about this book, is that the danger was very real. Ahmed really does try to, well, kill them. He locks them in a sarcophagus as well as Uncle Ben, and I was actually feeling really scared for the kids, so I think I liked this one quite a bit. I think I gave it 4 stars. Did I give this one 4 stars? Oh no, I got 3 stars. Okay, so maybe I didn't love it that much. Yeah, I gave this one 3 stars, but I did like the atmosphere. I liked how dangerous it was and how the danger felt really real. But yeah, it just progressively gotten more and more scary. This one didn't even have a twist ending like a lot of them do. It actually has a happy ending, which I'm a little bit disappointed about. Maybe that's why I didn't like it as much. It has been a couple of days now since I read this. I've been so bad at updating. I will say that even though there wasn't a twist ending, I can tell R.L. Stine is really trying to hit a word count with this one, because the cliffhanger endings are so drawn out. Like, it takes ages to get to the point. When we do finally get to the point, it's like, ooh, it's scary, and then obviously not in the next chapter. But yeah, in this one, it's very evident that he's just like continuously saying something, and something's happening very slowly, and then I'm thinking this, I'm thinking that, and then, oops, something happens, and then the chapter ends. Very drawn out in this one. Loved the setting, actually. Probably one of my favourite settings so far in a Goosebumps book. But yeah, 3 stars apparently. I thought it was 4, but it's not. I'm going to be very tough with my ratings, I think. The Monster Blood books are, I think, a series that Goosebumps fans either really love or really hate. And unfortunately, I fall into the latter category. I never really liked the Monster Blood books. I just never took with the whole concept. It's never been a concept that actually scares me. Monster Blood, it's slime that grows, and it is a bit of a terrifying concept if you don't know how to control it and things. But it's never scary in the Goosebumps books because the characters just make stupid decisions. And I don't think R.L. Stine utilizes the tension enough in the Monster Blood books. But that's just my personal opinion. You can come for me if you want, I don't care. But yeah, I don't like the Monster Blood books, so I think this one is also 3 stars, but it's a very, very low 3 stars. And out of the books so far, this one is my least favourite, but wait until we get to the next book. This one was told in 3rd person, so to begin with, I was really enjoying it because I kind of like that narration style. I don't know if this is the only Goosebumps book that does that, but I did like it. It meant for a little bit more detail and description around what the main character says, so I like that. But this one, there was just too many anticlimaxes that it just takes away every single scary bit. And again, I know the tropes of Goosebumps, I really do, but this one just overuses the anticlimaxes that nothing scary actually happens, ever. And I don't mind fake scares every now and then, even though it sounds like all I do is complain, but literally nearly all of the scares in this book are fake. And that's just not good. That's not good. At least give me something scary or some parts that are genuinely frightening. Most of it was fake. And don't even even get me started on that stupid dream sequence. There was a dream within a dream, and that just threw me. I was like, no, this is not right. It's frustrating is what it is. Oh, I should probably tell you what this one is about. We follow Evan, who goes to live with his Aunt Catherine, who I don't think he's really met. And Aunt Catherine is deaf, and she has a cat called... I keep wanting to say Carly Beth, but it's not because that's the main character in the Haunted Mask. What's her name again? Sarah Beth or something? Sarah Beth, sorry. She has that black cat called Sarah Beth. One day, Gabe goes to this weird shop and buys some monster blood. And the monster blood just gets out of control. His dog Trigger eats some of it and starts to grow bigger. And then, like, we have this really weird moment where Evan takes Trigger to the vet. And, like, surely that should have cost him something. Surely taking a dog to a vet in America is not free. But then the twist just didn't really make sense to me. So it turns out that the cat, Sarah Beth, is really an evil witch and cursed Aunt Catherine to be deaf, but also is in control of the monster blood, or at least cursed the monster blood, something like that. It was just a really bit of a ridiculous ending to me. I just didn't really like it. There have definitely been better twist endings, but I think when it comes to the monster blood aspect of this, none of the monster blood was scary. Even when Trigger was getting bigger and bigger, like, it just wasn't scary. And also, weird that the vet said, like, even though this is an old dog, that maybe it was a growth spurt. Bad vet, because if a dog has lived that long, as long as it has, there's not going to be a growth spurt at the end of its life, surely. So that vet is just... shouldn't be paid. But then we also had the exact same ending as the Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. So at the end of Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, we have, like, this shadowy figure coming to the door, and then, dun dun dun, turns out to be the parents. The exact same thing happens in Monster Blood. And I don't know which order they go in America, or which order R.L. Stine wrote them in, but it's still using, like, the exact same ending. And I just hated it. I will say there was more of a cliffhanger ending, whereas Curse of the Mummy's Tomb had a happy ending. This one did have a bit of a cliffhanger ending because the monster blood is gone. You know, dun dun dun, it's going to come back in 3 more books. Yeah, it says 3 stars in there, but I think I'm going to lower it to a 2. Actually, no, I'll keep it at a 3. I'll keep it at a low 3 because I did like the narration style and I kind of liked some of it, I guess. So I'll keep it at a 3 stars, but very low 3 stars. Worst one I've read so far until the next one. Let's Get Invisible. How about Let's Get in the fucking bin? This book wasted my time. This is a waste of time. The general concept of Let's Get Invisible is that our main character, Max, goes into the attic, goes into this really strange room that nobody's seen before, and there is this mirror in it. And there is, like, this light above this mirror, and when he turns it on, he turns invisible. And when he puts the mirror back, he becomes real again, which does sound good in theory. And the longer they're invisible for, the more strange they feel. All this book is, for 120 pages, is just Max, his brother, and his friends just trying out the mirror, one after another, trying to break each other's record. For 120 pages, that's all this book bloody is. Nothing scary is happening for 120 pages. And then finally, in the last part of this book, we have some of his friends come back different, and then Max goes into invisible mode, and it turns out that their reflections, their mirror images, are trying to replace them, and his 2 friends have been replaced, and Max is next. That's scary, and that's pretty, like, awesome. But then it's over, and, like, it's easily beat. I don't understand it. The way it's beaten, right, is Max's brother throws a ball at the mirror and breaks the mirror so that all the mirror image people get put back and the real people get put right. But then Max's brother at the end turns out to be one of the mirror people. And, like, why didn't he go back when he smashed the mirror? It doesn't make sense. It just does not make sense. Where's the logic on this one? I'm lowering it. 3. Nah, I'm lowering it to a 2. Maybe there is an explanation that I don't know about, but this just frustrated the life out of me. Like, why? One after the other, they just kept going invisible and trying to beat each other's record for the longest they've been invisible for. What's scary about that? What's entertaining about that? All they're doing is taking turns going invisible. Didn't really like the characters either. Lefty, Max's brother, is honestly so irritating. All he wants to do is scare him. Again, we have a character who just wants to scare the main character. I also don't understand why at the very start, when Max pulls the light, he makes himself go invisible, and then when he does it again, he comes back. Why then, for the rest of the book, the only way they can become revisible is when somebody else pulls the light? Why can't they pull the light themselves like Max did at the start? I don't get it. Also, the characters are absolute creeps. When they know about the invisibility stuff, even like Lefty, the younger brother, and Max, they're like, oh, should we go and spy on people? Max says, yeah, we could go and spy on girls and stuff. And Lefty's like, cool. I'm just like, these are kids, right? And then Lefty's younger than he is. I think Max might be like 12 or something. And Lefty's younger than him. I'm just like, But then Zach too, their best friend, is also wanting to perv on girls when he turns invisible. Really, it was awesome. I want to get invisible again before school on Monday so I can go and spy on the girls' cloakroom. They are so creepy, and I know the kids, and that makes it worse. It's just too repetitive for me. Max would be like, oh, I'm feeling strange, like, we shouldn't be doing this, like, this is terrible. What happens if we get stuck? But then he goes and does it anyway, you know, and he does it again and again, and his friends do it again and again. His friends get terrified when they take ages to come back to real visibility, I don't know. They get scared, but then they keep doing it anyway. This is probably the longest one so far as well, at over 140 pages. And why? It didn't need to be. So yeah, I hated this one. It says 2 stars. I'd love to give it 1 star myself. Core comes out with 2 stars, so that's why I'm giving it. Worst book so far, waste my time. And honestly, we should rename the series Gotcha Bumps, because the amount of times somebody does a fake scare, it's like, gotcha, every single book. Every book. Gotcha. Ugh. Night of the Living Dummy is one of my favourites from when I was a kid, so we returned to some form in this book. I'm giving this book 4 stars. It was really good. And just because there are actual scary moments in this, and that's just all I'm asking for. I don't want all of these fake scares that aren't actually scary. I want something that genuinely frightens me, and fortunately, Night of the Living Dummy had some moments where it did that. Dummies scare me anyway, and Slappy as a character is so iconic, but in this book anyway, it's more Mr. Wood. Mr. Wood is a different dummy. So in this one, we follow twins Lindy and Chris, and Lindy ends up finding a dummy in this skip and calls him Slappy. And then her twin sister Chris gets jealous and wants a dummy of her own, so she gets one called Mr. Wood. And then Mr. Wood starts to like move and talk and stuff by himself, and things start to get a bit creepy. I forgot that there was another dummy called Mr. Wood, and that this book is about Mr. Wood, not Slappy. And I liked that because I was expecting Slappy to do something, but it was mainly Mr. Wood. And Mr. Wood was doing things and saying things as Chris was trying to control him, so that people would think that Chris was the one doing the things. And that was like a really good story angle. But the characters themselves, Lindy and Chris, are just awful to one another. They're so jealous and petty with each other, and I know they're kids, and that's what siblings do, but they're actually just genuinely so spiteful and nasty to one another. Like when Chris gets invited to like a stage show, Lindy gets so jealous and she actually hates her sister for getting this opportunity. I'm like, oh, these characters are, I know they're kids, but like they're so horrible. There is some fat phobia in this one though, and like a lot of fat jokes, which I did not like whatsoever. There is a scene where the neighbours come round and the parents ask Lindy and Chris to perform their ventriloquist act for them. And you know what, actually, it's interesting. This is the second time that a married couple has looked exactly the same in the Goosebumps series. So the neighbours who come along, they're described as being like, they've been married for so long that they started to look like one another. And that's the second time that's happened. It's happened in a previous book, I can't remember which one. It might be in Stay Out of the Basement? I don't know. But then Mr. Wood starts to make a lot of fat jokes, and then even at the end on the stage when Chris is in front of everyone, Mr. Wood makes a lot of fat jokes again, and I'm just a little bit sick of a lot of the fat phobia in this series. Even in the next one that I read, just when people are described, it's always negative, and it's usually about body weight. So that let this book down a bit. It's not as great as I remembered it from when I was a kid, but it's definitely scarier than the previous ones. Less fake scares, and I do prefer the Goosebumps books where they're a bit more supernatural, because that means that the scares are usually real, as opposed to like the real life ones, because then the scares are usually fake. So, but definitely iconic. Loved the ending with Slappy. I loved how they finally got rid of Mr. Wood, because it did seem like their situation was pretty hopeless with Mr. Wood, and then they finally got rid of him, which was like a great moment. But then Chris goes to shut the window at the end in her bedroom, and then Slappy reaches up and grabs her arm. Hey slave, has that other guy gone? The dummy said in a throaty growl. I thought he'd never leave. And that, I was just like, oh my god, like that's so good. I loved it. The audiobook narrator of this as well, I wasn't the biggest fan of their Mr. Wood impression, like the way Mr. Wood would talk, it sounded more silly. But then as soon as they spoke as Slappy at the end, I was like, oh my god, that voice is amazing. But then, yeah, the book was over, so. But definitely one of my favourites. I think I still prefer Say Cheese and Die though, because that one was just like great. It was so great, that one. And I thought I would love this the most, so I'm a little bit disappointed that I didn't love this the most, but still really good. And I look forward to reading Night of the Living Dummy 2, which I think features Slappy a lot more than this one does. So yeah, lots to look forward to. The Girl Who Cried Monster is one that I finished last night, so I have the more recent thoughts on, the more fresh thoughts on. This one comes out with 3 stars as well, and this time we have the main character who's trying to scare her brother, rather than like the other way around, when it's the side character or the sibling who's trying to scare the main character. So I kind of like that little change up there. In this one we follow Lucy, who is part of like the Reading Rangers, and she has to go to the library every week to meet with Mr. Mortman, and he assigns her a book every week and she has to read it, give a report and get a gold star. However, one day Lucy ends up staying back at the library and sees Mr. Mortman turn into a monster, and because Lucy tells stories of monsters all the time, nobody believes her when she tells them about Mr. Mortman, which I really liked that angle, like the Girl Who Cried Monster, the Girl Who Cried Wolf. I liked that kind of almost like a morality tale, isn't it? Where you lie so often that people won't believe you when you start telling the truth. I like that aspect of it. It was really, really good. But like some of the characters just didn't make sense, and like why they would just continuously fall for Lucy's lies anyway. Like her brother was just so, what's the word? He was a sponge. That's all I can think of. He's a sponge. And do you know how in like Let's Get Invisible, when the characters would love to spy on people and perv on them? Well, Lucy's the same. Like she says, I like spying on people. It's kind of thrilling, even when they don't do anything very interesting. Just knowing that you're watching them and they don't know they're being watched is exciting. And that is really weird. But I will say that after reading the end and the twist, that makes a little bit more sense. And I'm sorry, I'm getting pins and needles in my foot, so I really want to hurry this along. Lucy doesn't make the best decisions. She decides to see if she can catch Mr. Mortman in the act of turning into this insect creature. She decides to stay back in the library and hide, and then she doesn't think of him closing up and locking the door. Like she's like, oh my god, he's locked the door? What? I wasn't planning on that. Well, you're staying after closing time, honey. Of course he's gonna lock the bloody door. So like she was just a little bit silly at times, but also the fact that she thinks that if she sees Mr. Mortman change again, that's when people are gonna believe her about him. No one believes you because you're always lying. So if you see him transform again without proof, why do you think people are gonna believe you? It is good that she tries to get a photo with him as actual proof, and it doesn't turn out the way it should. The majority of this book is really just Lucy trying to catch Mr. Mortman in the act and tell people about him, and then finally at the end, the parents invite him over, and then it turns out they're the monsters and they eat Mr. Mortman. And I'm just like, gosh, this is actually filled with a lot of gross imagery. Like even earlier on when Mr. Mortman eats a turtle, like the turtle's still alive and you hear the crunch of the shell, and I'm just like, oh my god, that's a living creature. Stop. It's pretty disgusting. But I actually heard that originally it was going to be children that Mr. Mortman ate, but the publishers thought that was too graphic or like too much for children, so they changed it to a turtle. I'm just like, eat the children instead. So I did kind of like the twist that it turned out the family are monsters and so is Lucy, but she just doesn't have her fangs yet and stuff. But then some of the earlier things just didn't make sense because of that, so I'm a bit like, was this a twist ending that just came out of nowhere because R.L. Stine wasn't sure how to end it? It's still good. It still got me. It shocked me. And I'm sure I did read this as a kid, but I just forgot that part of it. There's so much I've forgotten, okay? There's so much. I also don't know what kind of monsters they are. I think they might be vampires because it says that their fangs haven't grown in, like Lucy and her brothers. Maybe they're vampires, I don't know. But yeah, I did enjoy this one, but it is still 3 stars. Pretty good, I guess. Nothing mind-blowing. I do need to hurry up and read more. I have a lot of reading to do. I'm 6 books behind my goal of reading 2 books a day. 6 books behind. Anyway, I'm really excited about the next few. There's some that are coming up that I'm just genuinely so excited about, like Welcome to Camp Nightmare and The Haunted Mask. So yeah, I'm gonna get started on those ones. How do you like my new setup? These were just really cheap lights, a bit of a cobweb thing going on over there. It's not quite finished yet, but I do want some more Halloween stuff on my shelves just to make them look a little bit better. But yeah, today is September 10th, and my progress so far is that I am 6 books behind. I wanted to do the 2 a day, so really I should be on 20 now, or at least 20 by the end of today. That's not going to happen. I've only finished the first 14, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want 6 more updates for you. I also wanted to see if I could try and update you after finishing each book, but then I was like, nah, that's not going to happen. So we are a third into September, but we are not a third into the Goosebumps series, so I'm going to have to try and do some catch-up days. Maybe on a day off, I can try and read as many as I possibly can in one day. I could vlog that experience, see how it goes. Let's talk more Goosebumps. So welcome to Camp Nightmare. I always remember the TV show episode giving me nightmares. It was atmospheric, it had all of the really dark camp vibes. Now I'm terrified of camps. In fact, camping in the middle of the woods just in general, it scares me. You just never know what's going to happen. Fortunately, I really enjoyed this one. I'm giving it 4 stars. There were quite a few creepy moments, and fortunately, I liked Billy as a character, so Billy is our main character. He's been sent to camp, well, it's not called Camp Nightmare, it's called Camp Night Moon, but the counselors are a little bit weird, the campmates are a little bit funny. It's just like a bit of a funny time, but I really enjoyed Billy as a character. There was a moment early on where one of the other campmates plays a prank and there's snakes in the bed, and Billy has the idea of putting the sheets together at the top and, you know, carry them out like a bag kind of thing. I've explained that totally wrong. But he was a really good protagonist to follow. He wasn't like those other Goosebumps characters where they're trying to scare someone or whether they're being scared by somebody and they're just constantly terrified. Billy is smart and Billy is very pragmatic, a generally likable character. The fact that he even jumps in to the water to save one of the counselors like speaks a lot about him, which is the point of this book. So we do have this weird camp, and there's a girls' camp and a boys' camp, and things are not going to plan. There is this mysterious cabin that nobody's allowed to go into, and campmates start disappearing, and then it seems like they weren't there to begin with. Like, the setup and everything, the tension was fantastic. Like, I was terrified just of the idea of kids going missing in the middle of the woods. Even the idea of Saber, who is like this monster that people keep talking about, who you don't ever really see. And I just kept thinking, why are kids allowed to come here? Like, this is such a health and safety hazard. But obviously that's explained at the end. We do have a twist ending that kind of retcons a lot of the tension and the scares in this book, but I'm not going to take it away from this book because I'm definitely really harsh on the Goosebumps books as an adult, and I need to try and enjoy them the way they are. Saying that though, I do have some issues with some of the upcoming Goosebumps books as well. I'm trying to be a bit more lenient and try and kind of just go with the flow with these, so I didn't take any points off the ending for getting rid of a lot of that tension and scare that had happened beforehand, because as it turns out, the twist in this one, that the entire camp was a training program for Billy, and it is so that he can go on this really dangerous adventure with his parents, and it was sort of to test him. So that means that everything that happened in the book wasn't really a threat, which I don't mind too much, but it was a bit weird. And I do remember this from the TV show. It was a bit weird that at the very end, they're not even on Earth. Billy's parents are like, we want to take you on this expedition to Earth, which is the scariest place, it's unknown territory, and fair enough. Yeah, I don't know, it was like a little bit out of nowhere. It's good, but it's not good. I don't know how to explain it. Like, I've got so many conflicting emotions about that twist. But yes, 4 stars for Welcome to Camp Nightmare. Definitely one of the better Goosebumps books from the early days. One that definitely made an impression on me as a kid. And yeah, that's all I can say about this one. Okay, The Ghost Next Door. I'm so conflicted by it. Like, it was alright. 3 stars. It was alright. It wasn't great. It had a goodish story, but it kind of lost me a little bit because I wasn't really feeling it after a while. Because Hannah, she ends up getting a new neighbour called Danny, but she thinks that Danny is a ghost and his family are dead. And then there's this twist, which I may as well just tell you about right now. Turns out that Hannah is the one who was dead all along and her family, which I kind of saw coming, especially when Hannah is trying to call to Danny's mother from outside, and Danny's mother isn't turning around, she doesn't hear her, and I just instantly thought, Hannah's dead. Like, that's why she can't hear her. I mean, Danny tries to say that it was because his mum is deaf. Even when he said that, I was a little bit like, and then it turned out that Hannah and her family were dead, and I was like, yeah, I knew it. If I'd read it when I was younger, maybe I would have been really surprised by it and thought it was like the cleverest thing in the world. And it was a bit of a clever twist. It missed something for me. I don't know if it's because we were trying to get a lot of emotion at the end of this, and I don't think we get very, well, it's not as detailed, like the writing in this isn't as detailed, and we don't really get that sense of connection with the characters half the time because these books are just so quick and easy to read that it's really hard to form a bond. So with the whole Hannah twist, I didn't really feel much. There was a bit of a disconnect between me and the story, and I think it was because there wasn't a big plot outside of Hannah thinking that Danny is the ghost, and there wasn't really a lot of scary stuff happening, so I was just like, this is so middle of the road. Definitely one of the saddest endings in a Goosebumps book so far though, because it is sad, it is genuinely sad that Hannah and her family are dead, including her little brothers, and it's just like, oh, I do feel emotion there, but yeah, I just didn't care a whole lot about the characters, and the plot just let this down, so 3 stars. Definitely a little bit emotional, but I'm a cold, hard bitch. Okay, Okay, so this is definitely one of my favourite Goosebumps books of all time, favourite Goosebumps TV show episode of all time. The Haunted Mask is iconic, and it is so for a reason. Like, this just had such a brilliant premise, and it's executed really, really well. There's actually like a really good moral to take from it. This just felt like such a well-developed and well-crafted Goosebumps story. And when I was a kid, this actually gave me a fear of putting on a Halloween mask. So I don't think I ever wore a Halloween mask for a long time. I would put blood on my face and all of that, but I would never put on a Halloween mask for the sheer fact that I thought the mask would stay on my face forever. And it's all thanks to this book. So definitely got the Goosebumps from this one, which is exactly what I was wanting. But I think I'm going to give it a 5-star. As it comes to Goosebumps, it has everything in it. It has really charismatic characters in it. It has a really good plot. It has a lot of scares. And fortunately, a lot of the scares were not fake. We do have the gotcha. We have a couple of gotchas in this, and honestly, but it was fine because not every single scare in this was fake. In this one, we follow Carly Beth, who everybody loves to scare. Again, it's like a trope that Goosebumps books just seem to have now. Characters need to be scared purposefully by another character because a lot of the characters in the Goosebumps series are horrible people. In this one, Carly Beth is pretty much bullied by everyone. Poor thing, honestly. But then she wants to try and get her own back on Halloween. So she goes to this really strange store and she buys a mask that is really super scary. And she puts the mask on and it just won't come off. And it comes off once, but when she puts it on again, it won't come off again. The only way this mask will come off is through a symbol of love, which sounds really cheesy. The story just kept going and going, and there was never a dull moment in this. And I wasn't really sure how Carly Beth was going to get out of it, even though I've seen the TV show and I've read the books before as a kid. I couldn't remember how it unfolded by the end and how she ended up getting the mask off. And it does differ. I remember it does differ in the TV show, but in this one, it's such a great ending. Those masks terrify me. And I really like how the mask didn't just like stay on her face, but also changed her personality. It was changing her voice. It was making her more scary. And that was really scary. Like, that whole idea that having something on you that won't come off, that changes you as a person as well, so that you're so unrecognizable by everyone around you. That is terrifying. And I love it when Goosebumps does like this clever analogy of real life terror and, you know, the supernatural terror that's in these books. And this one just does it so well. There's just such great balance, such a great story. Love Carly Beth and Cole. Yeah, I just loved it. I loved it. There isn't really anything to criticize for it, apart from like the whole gotcha bits, but it's fine. But also, come on, actually, why would you put a real worm inside someone's sandwich? Even as a kid, like, that is just so gross. I think it was Steve who did that. Bad upbringing. But yes, definitely my favourite Goosebumps story so far. I was so excited to get to it. 5 stars. I loved it. Piano Lessons Can Be Murder. This was the very first time I'd ever read it. I don't think I ever saw the TV show episode of it either. Not from what I can recall, because when I was reading this story, I had no idea what was going on or where it was going to go. So in this one, we follow Jerry, who moves to a new house. And in this new house, there is this piano in the attic. And during the night, Jerry can hear this piano playing. And it's a really sad melody. For some reason, he ends up wanting piano lessons. So they get in touch with Dr. Shriek. Yeah, Dr. Shriek, to come along, give him some lessons. And then when he's good enough, he can go to Dr. Shriek's school and learn how to play piano. However, there is something a little bit weird about Dr. Shriek, and he's on the cover, oh my god, what was that cover? And you can just tell by the cover that it kind of spoils what happens. But I did really like the story of it, actually. We had Jerry, who has no idea what's going on with the piano playing because nobody else can hear it, so is he going crazy? But while I really liked, you know, Hannah from The Ghost Next Door and Carly Beth from The Haunted Mask, I wasn't the biggest fan of Jerry. Why does every single Goosebumps book have to have a prankster character? And like, Jerry just goes too far half the time. He does it to his parents and they're just so used to it. I'm just like, Jerry, just give it a rest for 2 minutes. Getting really sick of the prankster characters in this series. I mean, he did become a bit more likable when things started to get scarier for him and he didn't know what to do. That was when he got a little bit more bearable. I'm also not a fan of dream sequences, and this one had one, and it was pitiful, absolutely pitiful. Yeah, not a great deal to talk about on this one. Okay, so this one ended up being a 3-star. It's not very memorable. Dr. Shriek wasn't the most impressionable person. He was overcome very, very easily, and there wasn't really any tension by that point. It was a missed opportunity, it really was. Oh, you know what? I really didn't like this book. And I really, really didn't like Samantha Bird, who was the main character. I did feel sorry for her to begin with, but Samantha Bird ended up making the worst decisions of any Goosebumps character ever. I just cannot wrap my head around a lot of her decisions. Okay, anyway, the story. Samantha Bird, she is, badly bullied at school. She's very tall. People tell her to fly away because of her last name and stuff like that. And she's also part of the basketball team. She's really bad at it. But one day she helps this woman called Clarissa, and Clarissa rewards Samantha with 3 wishes. Samantha makes her wishes, but each time she does it totally wrong. The first wish was something like, I want to be the strongest player on my basketball team. The wish ends up making everybody else weaker, like so weak that they are bedridden, which, I like that twist and I like that kind of wish. I thought, oh, this is actually quite spooky, and like, oh, if that actually happened, like, that's terrible. And then the second wish happens, and it doesn't make sense. So the second wish, Samantha says, I wish Judith would disappear. And then Clarissa makes the whole world disappear. Like, everybody in the world disappear, like dogs, cats, people, like everyone, not just Judith, everyone. And then later on when Samantha's like, I wish for Judith to disappear, not everyone. And Clarissa's like, I performed the wish the best I knew how, or something like that. Like, how does erasing one person from the world mean everybody in the world disappears? Like, it didn't make sense. And even if it was something like, oh, it's really tricky to remove one person because they've been touched by these many people or whatever, still, surely it's more effort getting rid of everyone than it is just one person. Surely. I don't get it. Like, the second wish was just dumb. And then the third and final wish for Samantha was that she wishes that everything went back to normal, but Judith would think she was the best person ever. And even when she just said that, like, I was just like, you've been given this opportunity by Clarissa to fix your mistakes, and you do this stupid thing where you say, I wish Judith would literally worship the ground I walk on. Obviously it backfires. Obviously Judith won't leave her alone. So then Samantha gets another chance at a wish. So she gets a 4th chance, and at this point, I'm just like, Samantha, you don't bloody deserve it. And she still messes up this last chance. She learns nothing the entire book. In the final wish, she wishes for everything to go back to normal the way it was, but she wishes that Judith met Clarissa instead of her, which means she is giving Judith 3 wishes. She is giving her bully 3 wishes. Why? Obviously, the very end, the twist is that Judith wishes that Samantha was an actual bird and she would fly away. So we have Samantha eating a worm, which was gross, and flying away. Like, obviously that was going to happen. Samantha, why? Why? You actually had 4 chances at making wishes, and you messed up every single one. Obviously wishes, the whole title of the book, be careful what you wish for, it makes sense. But Samantha, you just messed it up so much. She could have saved herself the trouble at the very last wish, where she said, just make everything back to the way it was before I met you. Just say that. Why do you have to say it? But I wish Judith met you instead. I wish you would give her the wishes. What? Just why? Why? Honestly, there is just 0 character growth, 0 redemption in this book. It infuriated me. It frustrated me so much. Samantha, probably one of the worst characters in Goosebumps, to be honest. Nobody in the Goosebumps series so far has frustrated me like Samantha. It's only book 13, so we've still got a long way to go. But yeah, 2 stars I think I'm giving this one. I don't think it's as bad as Let's Get Invisible, because Let's Get Invisible was just boring throughout. At least this one had a bit more excitement, but it was dumb, and I just really didn't like it. The Werewolf of Fever Swamp, not gonna lie, it's literally the most recent one I read, but a lot of it I just didn't really take in. This was really interesting though, because we have Grady and Emily. They go to Florida so that their scientist dad, can perform these experiments. They go to Fever Swamp, and I love the atmosphere of Fever Swamp. It was very atmospheric. It was very dark, and I was a little bit scared. It kind of reminded me of Welcome to Camp Nightmare with Saber. It had that tension and that fear of the unknown. And then we do start having like these attacks, and Wolf, who is Grady's dog, is getting blamed for it, but Grady knows that it's not Wolf. There is actually a werewolf in Fever Swamp. We have Will, who actually turns out to be the werewolf. Oh my god, it's so hot in here. And actually that's really apt, because I really did like the descriptions of Florida and the swamps in this. Like, Stine doesn't usually describe things all that well, but in this one I felt the atmosphere, so that's really good. Honestly, I'm roasting now. And then we get to the end where Wolf saves Grady. I need the characters' names, they're going everywhere. Where Wolf saves Grady, but it's too late because Grady's already been bitten. So at the very, very end, we have Grady running off with Wolf. I liked the fact that, you know, he still turns into a werewolf and stuff by the end and that's all great and fine. But like just the character dialogue, like it has this huge complete 180, and I feel like some of that is to do with the audiobook narrator, because I listened to the audiobook of this as well, and it's where he's like, I mean, with Will out the way, the swamp is now mine, all mine, and it's the way the audiobook narrator says is like, it's all mine, all mine. It makes him sound like really evil, like he's just turned evil, but when I just read it normally, it just seems like, oh, he's like, the swamp's his. But fortunately, I think the book itself is a really good book, really enjoyable, fast-paced, entertaining, spooky, scary, skeletons. So yeah, this one's going to end up in maybe a high 3 or a 4 star. Don't 100% quite know just yet. I will be doing a complete ranking of all the books once I finish them all, so I might know better what my definite rating of this is. But it was definitely better than Be Careful What You Wish For. Like, oh my god, so much better. So I can't really read all that much today because I do have an interview later with an author. So yeah. Okay, progress report. We are on September 14th. It is the morning-ish. I have a fresh cup of coffee and it's really miserable outside, which is fantastic. I have now read 21 Goosebumps books and I have 7 of them to talk about in this update. According to the tracker, I am 33.9% into the series, which means I'm a third of the way through. Not great when it is the 14th, which means I wanted to do 2 a day, so I should be on the 28th book by the end of today. That's not going to happen. It's honestly been such a struggle, not going to lie, this has been a struggle. I mean, not actually reading them. They take about an hour now because I'm getting through them so quickly and I'm so used to them. I do enjoy some of them, but most of them have been... But out of these 7, there's only one that I really, really enjoyed. Just one. The rest of them were meh, or I really didn't like. You Can't Scare Me, and honestly, this couldn't scare me. This one follows Eddie and his friends who want to get back at Courtney because Courtney's always scaring them. Surprise, surprise, there's another prankster character. But Courtney seems like a saint, a hero, everybody loves her, she's not scared of anything. So Eddie and his friends try to find something that she's scared of. All this book is 4 kids with nothing better to do, trying to get their own back on Courtney, essentially, and failing miserably. There's nothing scary about it. Okay, I'm going to give it some kudos because there are a couple of scenes that I did really enjoy and were scary. So there's a scene with a tarantula and Eddie and his friend get locked in a supply closet with this tarantula. That scene did scare me because I do have arachnophobia, and if I was ever locked in a supply closet with a big ass tarantula, I'm out of there. So that was really well done. I did enjoy that. And then another bit I liked was at the end, Eddie's brother is making this film about the mud monsters that live in the swamp, kind of muddy swamp thing. And he has these really incredible costumes. So Eddie and his friends decide that finally they're going to get Eddie's brother to dress up as a mud monster along with his friends to scare Courtney. And at the end, we do think that he's doing that and the mud monsters are fake. But then it turns out that Eddie's brother and his friends are right behind them and they're like, hey, what's going on? And it turns out the mud monsters are real. But then it ends. So the one really good bit just was right at the end. And you know what? I'm finding a lot of these books, the blurbs are misleading because this talks about the mud monsters being rumoured to live there. Eddie doesn't believe the rumours, but they might be true. Like, that is literally just the very last, sentence of this book. There is nothing about this book that is essentially about the mud monsters. It is essentially just Eddie and his friends trying to scare Courtney. That's all this book is. This one is getting a 3 star because I did kind of like a couple of those scenes. I kind of saved it a little bit, but it's a low 3 star. I will say this actually made me laugh a couple of times. There was a scene where Eddie and his friends are trying to drop the tarantula on Courtney's head, but they drop it and it lands on one of their friends' heads instead. And it's just that kind of little bit of slapstick humour. Kind of got me. I was kind of liking that. But I will say that Eddie is not a great character. He's very selfish. He is not a really appealing main character at all, because all he's after is revenge. I mean, fair enough, Courtney does make his life a bit hell, but honestly, just live your life, man. Live your life. But it's when they try and get one of their friends' dog, I can't remember the friend's name, Charlene, her dog, they're trying to scare Courtney with her dog, but then the dog obviously doesn't do what they wanted to do, so Eddie's like, it's a traitor, you know, it's messed everything up. And I'm just like, God, it's a dog. Literally, it says on page 84, how could he be so irresponsible? He's a dog, and you're forcing him to try and scare someone and putting foam all over his face to make him look rabid. Of course he's not going to do what you're going to ask. He's a dog. And I'm kind of a little bit sick that the only way to get characters to do anything is to call them chicken. Because this happened in Let's Get Invisible. The main character did not want to do the whole mirror thing anymore. But then he does because, oh, you're chicken if you don't do it. And then that just like drives him on. I'm just like, look, if you're terrified out of your mind, I know you're a kid and I know this is a kid's book. They're essentially going through these traumatic experiences in their head. And they're still like, oh, he's called me chicken, so I have to do it now. No, you bloody don't. And also, I don't mind if that happens occasionally, but it seems every single time someone calls someone a chicken, somebody does it. I don't think that's a good message. Just saying. This book has saved the series for me so far. This is, I think, my second favourite after The Haunted Mask, and I knew it would be because I love this book so much. I loved it when I was a kid, loved the TV show episode. I even had a board game of HorrorLand, and that was incredible too. Essentially, I am obsessed with HorrorLand. And now of all the books in this update, honestly, this is the only one I really enjoyed. Not surprised in the slightest. So this follows the Morris family, and the son and daughter are Lizzie and Luke, and they also have their friend Clay come along with them. I forgot Clay existed because I don't think Clay is in the TV show episode. It's fine because it led for some dramatic moments. I love the idea of a really scary theme park, and especially one that's run by horrors, and I love their kind of design. I don't love them on this cover, but I love the way they're described. I think they're rather scary. But even though I had read this before, I kind of forgot a lot of stuff that happened in it, and I was still surprised by some of the twists and turns, especially since I think the TV show episode changes the ending, and this one had I think probably a better ending from my memory anyway. But after the Morris car explodes, which honestly was so dramatic, but I was like, this is not going to be a dream, is it? It's not going to be a dream, is it? No, it turns out it was real. Honestly, just any Goosebumps book that doesn't have a dream in it or just loads of fake scares in it, I'm gonna love. This does have some fake moments, of course, and moments where you think one thing, but it turns out to be something less scary. I mean, that's fine. I don't mind that when it's occasional, but there are some books that overdo it, but this is not one of them, fortunately. So this one is a 5-star. I'm gonna give this one The Haunted Mask. I love the scene with the slide where you have to pick which slide you have to go on, and then you go down it, but one of them is a doom slide where you end up sliding down forever, and Clay goes on the doom slide by accident. But yeah, obviously it turns out that it does end eventually. But I really enjoyed the fact that the main characters kind of confront their fears a lot and they go for it rather than like hiding and letting events happen around them. They actually inform the story and they continue the plot, which is fantastic. It's something that a lot of Goosebumps books don't do. I also, of course, love the scene in the coffins, in the river. Like, that was really good. And I do enjoy the ending. It turns out to be some kind of game show on the Monster channel that the Morris family are part of, and they've been on TV this entire time. And they can win a car. And it's just like, that's so ridiculous, but also like so fun. And it kind of makes sense that these monsters would have a world of their own, and they have the Monster channel where they put human families through these torturous experiences for the entertainment of monsters. Like, that is quite a good commentary on real life in reality television that I was like, oh, okay, I enjoy this. And then it turns out that they will actually have to die at the end of this kind of segment, and they start pinching the horrors and they kind of deflate like balloons, which I mean, I guess is like, okay, whatever. But there was a warning sign earlier on, so it does connect to it. It doesn't just come out of nowhere, it does connect to that. Then I love the ending with the horror coming up to them after they've escaped and being like, here's your free passes for next gen. The humor, it's so tongue-in-cheek and a little bit dark, and I like it. This is one of those examples where a Goosebumps book does it really well. Just not anything really bad about this one, to be honest. I didn't even write any notes for it. I just listened to the audiobook and read along physically and was just enjoying myself. Yeah, no bad things about this one. I mean, I'm sure there is probably little nitpicky things, but how often have I spoken well about a Goosebumps book in this video so far? So I'm going to keep this one as mostly positive. I was not looking forward to reading Why I'm Afraid of Bees, to be honest. I'd never read it as a kid, and it's one that never appealed to me. I mean, the cover's god-awful to begin with, and in this one we have Gary, and his neighbour has a lot of bees. But Gary wants to get out of his body, and there is this business that allows you to do a sort of body swap holiday thing for a week, and Gary wants to do that, so he signs up for it, and then when the switch happens, there is a bee or something nearby, and he accidentally switches places with his bee instead. The person he was supposed to go into goes into Gary, and the bee goes into the person that Gary was supposed to go into, kind of thing. I don't know how that worked. I genuinely don't know how that worked. There is barely any logic in this. The adult characters in this are absolutely dumb, but Gary's a little bit dumb as well. This is one of those ones where the main character just is such an idiot, and I don't like it at all. So this one got 2 stars. The idea of swapping bodies with an insect does scare me a little bit. I have thought about it before in the past, where, oh my gosh, like, what if I got trapped in the body of a spider or something? Like, that would be terrifying, right? There are some situations in this that are genuinely dangerous for Gary, and I like that. And it was a bit of an isolating and almost hopeless situation. So I was wondering, how is he going to get out of this? So there was a bit of intrigue there, not gonna lie, I was intrigued. But there was one moment in this that really paid me off, and it was the moment where this insect comes and bites Gary in half, and that's how the chapter ends, like, he bit me in 2 or something like that. The start of the next chapter, Gary just like, oh, it was my imagination. Stop doing this, please. The amount of times that characters have this imagination, which honestly, great, kids have imagination, it's fine. But when a lot of the cliffhangers rely on the tension and the scare, and then it's just their imagination, or it's a daydream within a daydream, I get so fed up. And it was the build-up of this as well, like it came out of nowhere, it was split in 2, and I was just like, oh, okay, you've got my attention. Oh, it's just my imagination. Stop lying. So honestly, other than that, this is quite an unmemorable book. I did like the fact that the person that Gary was supposed to go into and is now in Gary's body doesn't want to leave Gary's body, and we have that kind of drama where he won't leave his body, and it's like, ooh, okay. But other than that, quite unmemorable. I did like some of the scenes in the honeycomb and him trying to adjust to life as a bee, but it's just such a random, weird concept that I don't know, I didn't take to it at all. And I thought I would hate it more than I did, so fortunately I didn't. I will say though, a good part of this is learning to appreciate your body, because obviously Gary really wants to leave his body, and he's like, I don't want to be me anymore, I get bullied, and I don't have a life, pretty much. And so he wants to swap places with someone. And we do have this moral to be learned of appreciating your life, your body, all of that. So that is good moral. So I will give it that. You know how I just said that I hate when a character explains something because it was their imagination or was their dream? Well, Monster Blood 2 starts off with a dream. Not just that though, but we later on get a daydream within a daydream. I'm literally going to throw this book in the bin. In this one, we follow the same characters from Monster Blood. We have Evan, who goes back home, or at least I think he's moved. He's gone to like this new school, and he tells everyone about the Monster Blood, but nobody believes him, of course. Who would believe him? And so he gets bullied for it. And then Andy from the first book, his friend, she comes and she is going to his school for a bit, which is whatever, and she brings Monster Blood with her because, of course, these characters never learn. And Evan is probably one of the worst main characters in a Goosebumps book because he just completely forgets everything he went through in the first one, and he keeps falling for things. So there is a buddy called Conan who he does this handshake thing, and Evan falls for it 3 times. 3 times. Stupid actions lead to stupid cliffhangers. I honestly don't like the Monster Blood series in the Goosebumps series. It's one of my least favourite recurring plot lines, and for good reason. So they end up burying the Monster Blood to get rid of it. Like, why bring it in the first place? And Conan the bully gets his hands on it, so they go into Conan's house to get it back. So there is like this little bit of a tense scene where they've broken into someone's house, and then Conan and his family come. And then the whole scene just gets a bit ridiculous because every character is shouting out what they're about to do. So, like, Conan's going upstairs, he's like, oh, I'm going to my bedroom. And then just as Conan's about to enter the bedroom, his mum's like, no way, come down, you have to have your ice cream. So he comes down to have his ice cream. And then his dad is like, go do this, Conan. So Conan's like, okay, I'm going to go and do this and leave the kitchen. And then Evan and Andy are like, oh my gosh, no. And then his mum's like, no, let him eat his ice cream in peace. And then Conan's like, okay, I'm going to eat my ice cream now. I'm just like, why would you shout out your actions to inform them to get out? I don't know why R.L. Stine did that. I really don't. It was so anticlimactic. And it was like a really poorly executed scene. Ugh. Honestly, take a drink every time I get frustrated. There is more fat phobia in this series, a lot of fat shaming. I just wish we would stop with the descriptions of people being chubby or calling people fat freaks and things like that. It's not right. I really do wish we would move away from those descriptions, Stine. But the whole scenes with the Monster Blood, I mean, you do get a little bit more than the first Monster Blood, and you have this hamster that is in the classroom that escapes, eats some of it, gets big, and then Evan has to wrestle this hamster. Again, so ridiculous. And then suddenly everything just magically back to normal because the Monster Blood expired. Like, so in the middle of all this action, intention, the Monster Blood expires because the expiry date says it expires on this date, and apparently time, and then everything goes back to normal. Everything's fixed. What? I just can't get over how easy some of these situations become. And I know you're going to say, oh, it's a kid's book, but I've read kids' books that are really complex, really fantastic, really scary, so don't use that argument with me, okay? Kids' books can and are well written, scary, all of that, okay? Don't come at me. But honestly, as soon as Evan started wrestling a giant hamster, I was like, okay, that was when I knew the series was random as fuck. I'm a little bit torn with Deep Trouble, but at the same time, this is not a Goosebumps book. I'm literally going to put it out there, this is not a Goosebumps book. This is like a fantasy adventure book, and there is very little in this that is actually scary. I will give this props because there were 2 scenes that I did enjoy, but this just follows Billy, and he goes with his sister to his uncle who is on the sea, he's in a ship or whatever, and he is trying to find a mermaid. They do scuba diving things and all of that, which honestly I thought, oh, the atmosphere in this is really good. The open water really does scare me a bit, so we have so many opportunities for scares. And then we do, so we have this hammerhead shark that comes to attack Billy, and then he's saved by a mermaid. And I do like me some fantasy, honestly, but like some things are just a little bit too silly, even for Goosebumps. And this entire book is literally just them taking this mermaid and putting her in a tank. And that's it. Yeah, that's it. They kidnap a mermaid for money, but then obviously they change their minds and they tell the people who are offering the money that a mermaid doesn't exist. But this is just fantasy adventure. I guess the squid, I think there's some kind of squid monster thing under the sea that is a little bit earlier on, and I think at the end as well, there is this like sea monster, and I do think that is real, but we do not explore that whatsoever. Instead, we follow this mermaid storyline. It isn't scary. It genuinely isn't scary. Billy is not a great main character either. He just wants to punch everybody's lights out. He's very violent, not gonna lie. I was kind of hoping he would come to a grisly end. There was a really fantastic scene where he's swimming at night, but that turned out to be a dream as well. There are also some really illogical things happen. So the mermaid, she's crying underwater, but she also has tears coming down her eyes. Just like, wait, hang on, isn't she underwater? How are tears streaming down her eyes? I don't get that. So there are some like inconsistencies in this. It is boring for the majority of it because nothing scary happens. But I will say that the hammerhead scene, that was good. But this is no one's favourite Goosebumps book. No one's favourite Goosebumps book. And if it is your favourite Goosebumps book, then you obviously don't love yourself. Never ever wanted to read this book, to be honest. Even when I owned it, it was a concept that never intrigued me. Don't like the cover, don't like the name. It's the same with Why I'm Afraid of Bees. Just like anything to do with that, it just doesn't really get under my skin. It doesn't give me goosebumps. But yeah, in this one we follow Todd, and he's obsessed with worms, and he plays pranks on his sister every now and then. He ends up ripping this worm in half, and it looks like some worms are watching him do that, and they want to get their revenge by turning up in all of his things. So in his school bag, in his bed, in the bath, things like that. Turns out it's just his sister. So the entire book is essentially just his sister playing a prank on Todd, who is obsessed with worms. But to be fair, like, I am on his sister's side. Like, Todd is awful. He asks for help from his sister early on, and she gives him help, and then he drops a worm down her back anyway. This kid, he has problems. I love the idea that you shouldn't hurt, small creatures of any kind. That's a great model to have, but this book did not do that well. So, I mean, I thought with the revenge of the worms, that kind of would have been a good way of being like, don't hurt worms, don't hurt innocent creatures. And it's fine if it turned out that his sister was the one doing all of this stuff. But then at the very end, his new obsession is butterflies, and he kills a butterfly and pins it to the wall. Or what does he pin it to? He pins it to something. When the golden black butterflies stopped fluttering, Todd carefully opened the jar. He lifted the butterfly out with long tweezers and gently spread its wings. Then he hung it on a board by sticking a long pin through its middle. That is actually rather traumatic, not gonna lie. Like, you might just say, oh, it's only a butterfly, but like, see, that's an alive creature. And the main character just kills it. After he split a worm in two earlier on in the book, and then we have this stupid cliffhanger where this huge butterfly comes towards him, an enormous butterfly as big as a bed sheet. And then Todd cries, what are you going to do? And that's how it ends. Hang him on the wall. Todd doesn't learn his lesson. 90% of the Goosebumps characters do not learn their lesson. And I get frustrated by all of them. I could do a top 10 worst main characters that don't learn their lesson in Goosebumps and make that an hour-long video. I seriously could. There was one scene I liked where he's in the bath and the worms are just coming through, but it turned out that scene was a dream. So it turns out that every scene I ever seem to like in these books that don't have like supernatural elements to it are the scenes that are dreams. And that really does annoy me so much. It was a quick, easy read though. There are some really exciting Goosebumps books on the horizon that I'm really excited to read. I just have to trudge through the rubbish ones to get to those ones. So this was one of them. Definitely one that, again, is probably no one's favourite Goosebumps book. And then finally in this update, Return of the Mummy, I finished last night, and it was maybe a little bit better than The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, from what I recall. But let me ask you a question. Do you find people playing pranks on one another scary? Because I don't. And it just seems like they're non-stop. And it happens frequently in this book as well. There are lots of pranks being pulled. It does make you question what is real and what isn't real, which I guess is good and probably something that R.L. Stine wanted to do. Most of the scares are pranks. This one, again, like Monster Blood, follows the same characters from the first Mummy book, Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. So we follow Gabe and his uncle in Sorry. So Gabe goes over there and, again, doesn't learn his lesson from the first book. He seems to go headfirst into these situations without thinking. And Sorry, the character development of her from the first book, where she went through this really traumatic experience, so her and Gabe got a little bit closer. Seems like some of that character development faded away from the first book. You know what, I kind of like this book a little bit. I'm giving it 3 stars. It wasn't terrible. It might be just slightly better than Curse of the Mummy's Tomb because there were still some descriptive moments that I enjoyed. I like the setting of Egypt. I do remember the twist where Nyla turns out to be kind of the one who's trying to resurrect this mummy, and she's been betraying them and saying that she's a good person when she's actually not. I like that. But I kind of remembered that from when I was a kid, so I wasn't shocked. I didn't remember the mummy turning on Nyla, even though she was the one who was trying to resurrect it. I kind of wanted the mummy to be scary, and I kind of wanted the mummy to go after the kids and stuff, but there wasn't really anything like that. It just wanted peace, which, honestly, fair enough. But honestly, the rest of it was kind of just a retread of the first Mummy book, so it wasn't like new or original or anything like that. But then the ending, I'm kind of a bit torn with the ending because I kind of liked it, but kind of didn't. We have this scarab creature that obviously that when it bites you, it's like fatal and it kills you straight away. And that's, you know, something the Egyptians had and believed. And Gabe has this kind of pendant necklace thing with the scarab in it. But at the very end, it turns out the scarab has escaped. And we already had a moment earlier on where we thought Gabe had been bitten by a scarab. Sorry says, well, the scarab crawled away and disappeared. I bet that bug is waiting for you, Gabe. I bet it's waiting for you in your camp bed waiting to bite you. And then Gabe's like, sorry, you'd say anything to try to scare me. You just can't stand the idea that I'm the hero. And then a few minutes later, he goes into bed and then he says, ouch, which indicates that he was bitten. In my mind, he was, and he dies, because that would have saved this book for me. Also because I'm a bitch. But it is Goosebumps, so I bet you just like sat on his freaking foot or something. But I do like how it was left to your imagination. But still, the most interesting thing happens right at the very end. Again, I'm running out of things to say about these books, and we're only 21 books in. I still have another 41 to go. I'm a little bit scared. 10 more Goosebumps books down. I can safely say being halfway through the Goosebumps series and still being behind. This series was not meant to be read one after the other. If you're thinking of doing this challenge yourself, don't. When you read them one after the other, after the other, after the other, you start to pick up on certain tropes, but not just tropes, but recycled content and recycled characters and how alike all of them pretty much are, with a few exceptions. But I am slowly starting to lose my sanity, and let me explain. The Scarecrow walks at midnight, follows Jodie and her brother Mark. They go to stay at their grandparents' house, which they do almost every year, I think. I have read 9 Goosebumps books since this one, so my memory of certain details is slipping a little bit. And Jodie and Mark are picked up by Stanley, who is a sort of helper around the farm, and Stanley has made these scarecrows that live in the fields of their grandparents' farm. But there is something really weird with Stanley. He keeps referring to this book that he made the scarecrows from, that he lives by, he knows all the superstitions, and he just keeps referring to this book. There's also another character in this called Styx, who is Stanley's son, and Jodie, Mark, and Styx kind of have this little bit of a friendship, but not really, because Styx is that stereotypical prankster character who is in every single Goosebumps book. I need to stop talking about all the fake scares, because at this point, I'm just repeating myself. I'm getting as bad as the Goosebumps book. I did like this one, okay? I'm going to start off by saying I did like this one. I'm going to give this one 4 stars, I think, because there is a certain point in this Goosebumps reread where I just have to accept what this book series is giving me, and I can't change anything about the formula, and I just have to sort of go into each book knowing that. It's still hard though. It's still hard when, say, Jodie, for instance, when she's getting scared by a scarecrow, but it turns out to be a broom handle, or it turns out to be weeds in the river, and it's just, I need to shut up about all of that, I know. You're probably sitting there at home thinking, God, will he just shut up already? Again, it's just something that really distracts from the actual tension and scares from the series. I will say the Scarecrow Walks at Midnight does a really good job at setting up the atmosphere and how we do have some pretty suspenseful moments. The setting of the farm is rather eerie in itself, especially when I remember there being one scene where Jodie is looking out the window one night and she sees the Scarecrow moving. You think it might just be the wind, which it probably was, but you know, it's just that kind of fear where it's almost a genuine fear. Even if it was the wind, it was still terrifying to Jodie. Saying that though, when she grabs the broom hand, like that's just honestly one stupid fake scare, because I'm sure she's sitting at the table with her grandparents and she goes over to touch her grandma's hand and it turns out she grabbed a broom handle instead, but she freaks out thinking it's a scarecrow, and like that just, some of the scares are just a little bit ridiculous. I was expecting the way it unfolded, because with Stanley having this book of superstitions that brings the scarecrows to life, and the only way Stanley will keep them asleep is if Grandma and Grandpa, oh, I can't remember their names, Grandma and Grandpa, as long as they kind of do what he says and don't laugh at him or something like that, then he will keep the scarecrows asleep so that they will not terrorize them. I was expecting that. Jodie and Mark, they noticed that Grandma and Grandpa are different this year. They think it might be old age, or they think that, you know, they just might be tired, but things are just like far too different. And Stanley's always there. It's this really weird dynamic, so obviously it was going to be Stanley all along. I do kind of like the climax of it, because it turns out that when, I think it was Mark, when he's dressed as a scarecrow and he moves, then the scarecrows mimic his movements, so that's kind of how they get rid of the scarecrows. The scarecrows are a creepy visual, I'm not gonna lie. At least the scarecrows were actually real and they weren't just fake, like it was an actual spell or an enchantment from this book that brought them to life. So yeah, this one doesn't stand out really that much, but because a lot of the Goosebumps books are just people playing pranks on one another and nothing actually scary is happening, when something like this does come along and something is genuine and real and scary, it just brings this really great childlike creepiness to it. Something that Goosebumps does do well every now and then, but it's few and far between. So because of that, I mean, I probably would have rated this a little bit lower, but it was a little bit different. Attack of the Mutant is again a little bit different from other Goosebumps books. It follows Skipper, who is obsessed with these comic books, but more specifically these comic books about this mutant, and it's a comic book that gets sent to him I think every month or every week. It's weird because the timings in this one just don't match up, because he is supposed to get a brand new comic every now and then, but these comics end up like predicting things and telling him what's going to happen next. And I mean, I liked that part of the story, don't get me wrong, I liked it, but it just seemed like not enough time was passing between these comics coming, and I just didn't understand the time frame of this book. It just seemed a little bit all over the place. I've also noticed in these Goosebumps books there are two types of characters, skinny or chubby. That is how a lot of the characters in Goosebumps is described, and I don't like it. I honestly don't like it, because it feels like that's the only defining trait of characters half the time, is if they're chubby, which is how Stine describes it. It's not a term I like. There's a lot of self-loathing with Skipper actually, because he describes himself as chubby. He wishes he wasn't. It's the part where he has discovered the Mass Mutants' real-life headquarters, and he comes across the hero, the Galloping Gazelle, who ends up leaving him and is honestly a terrible superhero. But they're both running away. But there's a lot of self-loathing because Skipper can't keep up, and he's saying things like, I suddenly wished I hadn't eaten so many Pop-Tarts and bowls of Frosted Flakes for breakfast this morning. If only I were a little slimmer, a little lighter. I'm not very athletic. What an understatement. Whenever the kids I know play any sports, I'm always the last kid to be chosen for a team. But there's just like so much doubt and self-loathing in the fact that he is focusing on his own body image, and Skipper himself is rather judgmental of other people's. Another thing that just makes sense in this as well is that he makes a friend called Libby, and Libby has this comic book collection and he looks down on her for it because her comic book collection is a series that is like a bit childish or something, so he's a proper snob. He's a comic book snob. Big twist is that Libby turns out to be the Mass Mutant in disguise, but I don't understand that because Libby takes Skipper to her home, and I'm sure he meets her parents, and because he's just set up this whole other life really as Libby, and it just doesn't really make any sense. But I did like the twist a bit because it was a bit of a shocking moment. It didn't make sense in the long run, but it was a shocking moment. And then we do have the actual downfall of the Mass Mutant, and it was really clever the way that Skipper did it. And usually with these confrontations or the climaxes of Goosebumps books, the characters just seem to not be smart, and the resolution situation seemed to be more quickly resolved kind of climax, and it wasn't as quickly resolved in this. We have that confrontation between Skipper and the Masked Mutant, and then Skipper uses his own knowledge of the comic books to get back at the Masked Mutant and make him defeat himself, really, by making him turn into a liquid, because he says it's the only way that will defeat him. And then, yeah, the Masked Mutant turns into liquid, which he can't come back from. It was good. The way I'm explaining it is not. Again, not a scary book in the slightest, but it was rather entertaining. It was a little bit more action-y than anything else, and when Skipper and Libby go into the Masked Mutant headquarters for the first time and go into the basement and things like that, that was a little bit tension-y, but it was definitely something that kind of got more into the action-adventure side of Goosebumps rather than the scary side of Goosebumps. Overall, I think it's a 3-star. I don't think it is a great Goosebumps book, but I do think it's one that you could sit down and just be entertained by. So for that reason, I mean, it's pretty good. My Hairiest Adventure. Every now and then we get a Goosebumps book that is just so random. In this one we have Larry, who is teased all the time by his friends. Like, his friends are really horrible and nasty, not gonna lie. A lot of friendship circles in the Goosebumps books are not healthy. This one, Larry does get teased, and he has really nice hair or something. He has very lush hair, and people tease him about it, and he blushes, and that makes people tease him more. And I'm just like, why are you hanging out with these people? But the whole premise of this is that Larry and his friends find this suntan lotion in a neighbor's trash can, and they go into this trash can, take it out, and put it on themselves. Yeah, they start, sprouting hair. Larry starts sprouting hair in random places, and then it turns out that it's because they're actually all dogs, or at least most of the kids are dogs, and I'm trying to wrap my head around it. So parents take dogs to this person who turns them into people, and that's the kids in this neighborhood. Not all of them, but most of them. And I guess this lotion made them revert back to being like an animal. Honestly, like, I read this one so quickly because I was just like trying to like get through it as quickly as possible that I just don't quite understand. Like, that whole idea of this doctor turning dogs into people was a little bit sinister in a way. Like, it does have bigger implications, but again, it's just not explored properly, and it just kind of is a great idea that doesn't translate well in this book. And the problem with this is that most of this book is just spent with Larry dealing with hair growth. That's essentially what it is. Puberty, okay? We all go through it. And I can kind of see the correlation with that and how scary puberty can be, fair enough, but I just didn't think it translated very well, especially since we had that great idea, this doctor transforming animals into people, because at the very end as well, and I kind of like the ending where Larry, who's now a dog and he's playing with his friends, says that his mum is bringing back this new baby, and the baby looks like the cat that has been with them all this book. I would have liked to have seen how that would have went, I guess. It's so random. So I didn't really enjoy this one all that much. There wasn't really much sticking out for it. Not quite a 1-star, but My Hairiest Adventure is definitely a 2-star book for me. It just didn't really do that much, to be honest. I will say another repetitive thing in the series is that whenever a character is ginger or has red hair, that R.L. Stine describes it as carrot-coloured hair. The exact same thing happened in Attack of the Mutant. I think Libby was described as having carrot-coloured hair, and then we have another character in this who has carrot-coloured hair. That's a little bit lazy. There was one bit that made me gag, and that was when Larry is eating, and then he's twirling what he thinks to be like spaghetti, and he puts it in his mouth, and it's actually hair. That did make me gag, but it turns out that was all a dream anyway, so that paid me off, but also it still made me gag. That was a horrible visual. It's a little bit of an irrational fear, I guess, but eating hair, nah. I can't even talk about it. Like, that does make me physically gag a little bit. So well done to My Hairiest Adventure for doing that. But also I'm still really paid off that it turned out to be a dream. And yeah, I don't understand the characters. I didn't like the characters. Why would you take a full bottle of something that had expired out of somebody else's trash can and put it on yourself? It's in the trash for a reason. Okay, we can talk about a 5-star book, okay? Finally, we get to another 5-star in the Goosebumps series. I love A Night in Terror Tower, and I loved it as a kid, and I remember this was in my top 10 Goosebumps books from a few years ago, so nothing's really changed there, but I had forgotten bits of it. Looking forward to books like A Night in Terror Tower makes it all worthwhile, because this was just so good, and it was a little bit different to other Goosebumps books, because one, we actually have a supportive sibling. I mean, they do play pranks, well, little pranks on each other every now and then, but we actually have supportive siblings from the beginning. So this one follows Eddie and Sue. They are on vacation from America in London, and their parents are off doing this kind of meeting thing, and the kids are on this tour in the Tower of London. And as everyone knows, the Tower of London has this really bloody history. A lot of torture happened there, a lot of deaths happened there. But there was this story about a princess and a prince who went into the tower on command by their uncle. And in the Tower of London, there is this really strange man who's by himself watching these kids, and he tries to kidnap them. And honestly, that is terrifying in itself. So we have another great concept from the Goosebumps series, but I just really enjoy Eddie and Sue as characters because even just from the beginning, I think it's Eddie who is scared of the Terror Tower, I'm just going to call it. Sue is actually trying to comfort him. And usually in these Goosebumps books, we have like a sibling just being like, oh, you're a scaredy cat, I'm going to scare you even more, and just make the situation worse. But Sue, realizing they're in a totally different country by themselves, essentially, I mean, they don't have their parents with them, they're with a tour group, but essentially they're by themselves, and it's really nice that she's so supportive of him, and they just have such a really great character dynamic, especially since we see the same character dynamics in almost every single Goosebumps book, but we finally break the mold a little bit with this one. So I love the Tower of London setting, and especially when they get separated by the tour group, because I know, like speaking from experience, being in a different country that you're not familiar with is a scary concept in itself. So I got that feeling, I got that fear from the times where I've been in a different country by myself and feeling like, oh, I feel so lost, I feel so alone. You do feel that in this. So this was actually a pretty well-written Goosebumps book as well. And then you have the added addition of this stranger danger, where this man is trying to take them, and you're just a little bit like, why? Oh my gosh, like an adult trying to kidnap a child is like such a real genuine fear, and it was a real genuine threat to Eddie and Sue, and it wasn't like it was just turning out to be somebody who was, I don't know, a distant relative looking for them or something. This was an actual man from the past trying to kidnap them. So scary. So this book actually did a lot because Eddie and Sue do escape Terror Tower, and they go to the hotel their parents are supposed to be staying at, but it turns out their parents don't even really exist there, like they don't have a room there, and the kids are like, wait, what's going on? Like, and again, I was a little bit confused at what was happening because I couldn't remember that from the TV show or the book when I read it as a kid. I'm sure it does happen in the TV show as well, but I just couldn't remember that part. And then finally, you know, the guy catches up to them, they transport it to the past, and you do feel, again, trapped. This is a book that really does make you feel trapped and alone and terrified. So that's why I'm giving this 5 stars. It's one of my favorites because it just actually made me happy reading it. I was just like, yes, please give me these scares. Make me feel this way. Make me feel like I'm lost and alone and afraid, because this is why I read Goosebumps. I want these feelings. And I know I'm an adult. I know I'm not in the age bracket of this book series anymore, but I'm trying to go into these books remembering my feelings towards them as a child. But even then, like, I feel like children are smart enough to know that having a book just filled with pranks or fake scares is not actually scary. But I don't know, maybe I'm giving children too much credit. But this one, it utilized those scares, and it really did it effectively. And we do have the mistaken identity of Sue and Eddie being the prince and princess that were doomed to be executed in the tower from years ago, and that whole storyline again was great, and I believe that's based on a true story of 2 princes that were sent to the Tower of London and were never seen again, and I like that. I love a little bit of true crime in my Goosebumps series. So again, like, I just loved everything about this. It was fantastic. Saying that though, there was a little bit of a the resolution was a little bit easy, and the kind of climax didn't really make a whole lot of sense, and I'll tell you why. At the end, they are kind of almost rescued by a magician or sorcerer called Morgrid, and Morgrid says that he can't travel to the present with them for some reason. I don't know why he can't. So Eddie and Sue, they are the ones who are put in charge of changing time and are given these rocks, and they go back to the present day. They go back to the 20th century, and Morgrid is like, thank you for bringing me to the 20th century. I'm just like, but wait, you just said you couldn't do that. So what I don't get it. Like, how did Eddie and Sue manage to bring him to the present day when Morgrid himself said that it couldn't be done, and that is why he kind of lets them do the spell with the stones or whatever, and they managed to do it? I don't know. That bit didn't make sense. I might be reading too much into it as well. But I'm just overlooking that because I'm like, finally a Goosebumps book that I genuinely bloody love. And then we get into the Cuckoo Clock of Doom. I mean, we go from having really supportive siblings that really fight for one another to this one. And I do believe, in my opinion, Tara is probably one of the worst characters in Goosebumps. Saying that though, there are a lot of characters like Tara in Goosebumps. And when I say worst characters, I mean out of, you know, the human characters, I guess. Obviously, she's not as bad as, you know, a villain. Then again, a lot of the villains are more interesting. But Tara, she just made my blood boil, honestly. Michael is our main character, and he keeps getting his birthday ruined by her, he keeps getting days ruined by her. She just does these horrible, nasty things to him, and she just keeps getting away with it because Michael and Tara's parents are so, like, ignorant, and they just take Tara's side all the time, even though they watch her do a lot of this stuff. They watch her get on Michael's brand new bike for his birthday, and watch her ruin it, and, like, get a scratch on it or whatever, and they are still able to blame Michael for it. I don't compute. Parents in Goosebumps, 9 times out of 10, are the worst. But anyway, in this one, Michael's dad gets this cuckoo clock, and it has this dial thing on the side that has all of the years on, going up to the year 2000, and then Michael turns the head of the bird that comes out of the cuckoo clock. It ends up going back in time, so it's a little bit like Benjamin Button, where Michael starts to, you know, become younger and younger, and that actually was a little bit scary because every time he was getting younger, like each day was getting much younger, not just like a day was going back, but like years would pass in just a night, and he would be down to being a baby. That was a little bit scary because I wasn't sure how he was going to get out of it. And again, there was an easy resolution and things, but what I did really kind of like in this one, everything does get fixed and he does come back to the present day, well, back to his 12th birthday. A year has been knocked off, and it turns out that year was the year that Tara was born, so Tara doesn't actually exist anymore. And honestly, I kind of like that. It's horrible, especially for Michael being like, should I bring it back? Should I not? He was debating, like seriously debating, bringing his sister back who has just been erased from existence. But you know what? I kind of don't blame him. A lot of infuriating characters in Goosebumps, and obviously Tara doesn't really deserve to be erased from existence. This makes me question my own morals, to be honest, because yeah, just keep her gone. So the Cuckoo Clock of Doom, 3 stars, because I did kind of like that story of it happening, and that idea of kind of going back in time until you're no longer existing in the world. That is rather terrifying. Visually, not frightening, but just the idea of it was rather frightening. After talking about Night in Terror Tower, the rest of these are just gonna like pale in comparison. Honestly, and make it stop. I really am getting more and more fed up with the Monster Blood series the more I read them. Honestly, it's not just because of the idea of Monster Blood and the fact that it can grow and consume, and that itself is a scary idea, but honestly, we are focusing on the wrong things in the Monster Blood series, really. We have the same characters from the first Monster Blood. We have Evan and Andy. I like those characters to begin with. This is their 3rd adventure with the Monster Blood, you know, thing. Everything they learn from the first 2 books, just out the window. They just do not learn, and I hate it. Quite honestly, I almost DNF'd this after reading the first chapter. I was this close to just putting it down, because as you can guess, the first chapter is a dream. My least favourite Goosebumps trope is the first chapter in my least favourite Goosebumps recurring series. One of the worst Goosebumps books, quite honestly, because unlikable characters make this a painful reading experience, because we have another Tara character in this one in the form of Kermit. Kermit is Evan's cousin who is always playing pranks again. So we have the same bully from Monster Blood 2, Conan, who again is just that cardboard cutout kind of bully. Conan does something horrible to Evan, and then when Kermit tells his mum, who is Evan's aunt, Kermit says that it was Evan's fault. And I'm just like, why would you do that? I mean, I know you're a horrible little piece of shit, but you're actually lying about something that doesn't even affect you. Like, it didn't even affect Kermit. Tara and Kermit are on the same level. But again, we have those awful adult characters because Evan's aunt, she just believes everything Kermit says. But it's the fact that Dee is just like the parents of Michael. Oh my god, all their names. Is it Michael from Cuckoo Clock? Yes, it is. All the names are blending into one for me. Seriously, I cannot separate half of them because they're all pretty much the same. But his aunt, Aunt Dee, she is exactly the same as Michael's parents in the Cuckoo Clock of Doom. Like, exactly the same. But the main thing about this was the fact that, you know, Andy has monster blood and they're thinking of using it against Kermit, which honestly, fair enough. Teach that little shit a lesson. But you have gone through 2 other books where monster blood has not gone to plan and it has kind of caused chaos in your life. Why would would you mess with that again for a third time? In this one, we have Evan who accidentally eats some of it and he grows bigger, and then he wants to get his own revenge on the bully. Not a great message to Sam, but a lot of Goosebumps books are about revenge. In this one, like, Evan just comes across as so bitter, and fair enough because he just get horribly bullied by Conan. Bullies should never get away with it, but I don't think the way it goes about in the Monster Blood series is the right way of going about it. So I just think it just missed opportunities for lessons learned. Like, Monster Blood is honestly tired at this point. I know there is one more Monster Blood book to go, and it's the last one. I'm not looking forward to that one at all. So yeah, 2-star for Monster Blood 3. But it just needs to retire at this point. Ghost Beach starts off with a dream. This one follows two siblings, Terry and Jerry. That's actually the first time I've said their names out loud and realised they rhymed. But they go to their distant cousins in New England and they take them to a cemetery, and there is a story about ghosts. And there is this really creepy cave that Jerry really wants to explore. Terry and Jerry come across three siblings, Sam, Louisa, and Nat, and they're a little bit strange, but they become pretty good friends with Terry and Jerry. It's so weird saying their names out loud. However, there is this idea that there is this ghost living in a cave. Turns out it's a man living in this cave, and twist ending is that Sam, Louisa, and Nat are the ghost children, and I was not surprised. Their last name is Sadler, and Sadler is on some gravestones and things, so like it's really easy to kind of deduce that they're the ghosts, even though it tries to make you think that they're not. One thing I will say, actually, there is another twist ending where Terry and Jerry's distant cousins, who they are staying with, they turn out to be ghosts as well because a dog is barking at them. That was actually a pretty good little kind of twist ending bit there. So this book was a 3-star book. I did kind of like it, mainly because of the descriptions and the atmosphere, because I love the setting of it. We do see a cemetery, we do have ghosts. There are also, and it's a little bit disturbing, the skeletal remains of a dog, and there is that story about how dogs kind of bark at ghosts and give them away, so that's kind of why like these dogs aren't really around. But then the way that the twist ended happens with the cousins being ghosts is that a dog is barking at them. And that was a little bit of a nice, clever kind of nod thing to, you know, a little bit of continuity in this book. And it doesn't happen often, but I did like that kind of circling back to that point. But again, character-wise, and I think a lot of people are again going to get tired of me talking about this, but I didn't really think that Terry and Jerry were very charismatic. They didn't really have any distinctive personalities. They were just there to kind of be part of this plot that was moving on with them. They didn't stand out whatsoever. Not like Sue and Eddie from A Night in Terror Tower. Terry and Jerry, other than their pretty cool names, I guess, and saying them out loud just makes me chuckle, they just didn't do anything for me. They just did not stand out. And so this book on its own doesn't really kind of stand out, or it's like not anything special. I do like a good ghost story every now and then, so it was pretty good for that reason. Spooky enough, loved the cemetery setting and the beach setting and the cave. All of that was fab, but I think it just was let down by characters trying too hard to distract you from the real ghosts, which are Sam, Louisa, and Nat, and trying too hard to make you think it's not them when you just know all along that it's definitely them. I never actually read Phantom of the Auditorium as a kid, and I don't think I ever saw the TV show episode of it either, because none of this was familiar to me. I mean, other than the fact that this is a bit of a Phantom of the Opera kind of inspired story, kind of enjoyed this one actually. I gave this one 4 stars, and I wasn't really expecting giving it 4 stars when I went into it to begin with. I just thought this was going to be another kind of like generic story, but no, it turns out it was actually pretty good. This follows Brooke and Zeke, and they are doing this stage show at their school called The Phantom, and there is a story like behind The Phantom that's a little bit scary about how a boy was playing the Phantom like 100 years ago or something like that. Not 100 years, like maybe like 80 years ago or something. No, not even 80. It's been a good few years. And this boy like disappeared during this stage production of the Phantom. So that was pretty good world building. A little bit scary because then we do have this idea that this Phantom boy is haunting this stage show. And then Brooke and Zeke end up discovering, because they go through the trapdoor, they discover like these corridors and tunnels and things, and they discover a man living down there. And when they get back to, you know, the school and things, and they tell, I think it was the principal they tell, or a teacher, or it could have been the drama teacher, can't remember, but they tell an adult, they tell somebody who works at the school that there was a man living under the school in the trapdoor beneath the stage, and nobody believes them. Again, like, this is adults being willfully ignorant in books. Like, if a child tells you there's somebody living downstairs or whatever, and especially in a school as well, where it's like a really big safety concern, surely you would at least check it out or get the police to check it out. They just said, no, you're making that up. You don't ignore kids when they come to you with a problem, because this will probably make kids think that they can't go to an adult for help. They can't go to a teacher whenever they see something suspicious. But then this new kid kind of starts, and it turns out this new kid is a ghost of the kid who died or something when he was playing the Phantom, and he had disappeared. Like, that was a nice little twist, but I did see that coming, because you're led to believe that the man under the stage is the kid from years and years ago, and he's been living there since. Like, that's kind of what you're made to believe. But this new kid, this new boy, it's just so obvious the way he's just shoehorned into the story as a new character who's desperate to be in this musical or this play. It didn't work. So even though I'd never read this book before, I wasn't really surprised by it. I was still entertained by it. I did think it was still a really good story. Some bits were creepy. Again, I'm trying not to be too picky with Goosebumps books at this point, but it's getting harder and harder. Not a bad story, and I do kind of like it. Oh gosh, this is like running a marathon, honestly. I didn't realise this, but mine says special edition, see inside. Keep out, I've got Goosebumps. And it's a door hanger thingy-mabobby. Isn't that so cool? I kind of want to take it out and use it, but at the same time, I don't. But it came from beneath the saying, gets a 2-star from me. It wasn't great in the slightest. I wasn't really that scared by a killer sponge, really. This one follows Kat and her brother Daniel, who moved to a new house, and they discover this kind of like sponge underneath the sink. And this sponge, it moves, and gruel brings about bad luck. It feeds on bad luck. So every time Kat and Daniel have this sponge with them, there is bad luck happening with other people around them, with themselves. At that point, just throw the thing out. But they can't throw it out. I've just remembered, they can't throw it out, because if they throw it out, then they will die in 24 hours. It makes it a lot harder for them to just dispose of it. So I like that. It definitely reminded me of some creature features back in the 50s, like that kind of B-movie kind of feel to it. But again, it didn't scare me. I thought the plot was a little bit ridiculous. It's not a scary creature in the slightest, like a sponge. I do have to give R.L. Stine props for coming up with new concepts. I would say why people would like this one. To me, it just, for my taste, it wasn't that great. Especially at the end. Earlier on, there was this mention of like this potato with fangs or something. And then at the end, there was a potato with fangs. Yeah, if you're confused, it's with good reason. 1, because I'm not great at explaining things. 2, it just comes out of nowhere. It's weird. It was mentioned earlier on in like this book that they found out about the grueling. They're like, oh, there's like this potato with fangs. And then a potato with fangs happens to come across them at the end. There's just too much recycled material in this book. Like, I'm saying kind of the same with Night of the Living Dummy, where they have this thing that is causing trouble and they try to get rid of it, but they can't. You can just tell it's recycled from those kinds of stories. One of the quickest ones to read, though, because you are introduced to gruel early on, so it's not like, you know, you're wasting time coming to a point. Like Let's Get Invisible. You actually do have more story. Yeah, nothing else outside of that I enjoyed, to be honest. So this was just another one that is like, it's there, it exists. Doesn't mean I have to like it. Finally for this update, oh my god, Night of the Living Dummy 2. And I really like this one. I actually think I might like this one a little bit more than the first Night of the Living Dummy, because this one is predominantly Slappy. Now in the first Night of the Living Dummy was mainly Mr. Wood, not really Slappy. Slappy does come to life at the end and grabs the main character in the first one, but he's more in this one and he is the main perpetrator. It is still 4 stars. I don't think it's quite 5. I just enjoyed the story. We follow Amy, who has these really kind of strange parents who make them have family share night. And she has an older sister called Sarah who can paint and she's really talented. Amy's a little bit jealous of her. And then we have Jed, who is the youngest brother. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of me, my sister, my brother. So I kind of liked it for that. I could kind of see my family in this book. But Amy is the one who is obsessed with dummies. She has Dennis, who keeps falling apart. So her dad gets her Slappy and she brings Slappy to life, and then strange things start to happen in the house and Amy gets blamed for them even though it was Slappy, and nobody believes Amy when she says it's Slappy doing it. So I mean, it's kind of a bit of a retread of the first Night of the Living Dummy, but to me that was kind of fine because I felt like it did it a little bit differently. It felt like such a hopeless situation for Amy. Like, I didn't know how she was going to get out of it, even though I've seen the TV show episode of it and it has Amelia Shepardon from Grey's Anatomy, but it just felt like such a hopeless and desolate situation for Amy. And then we get to kind of the climax of this book, which is one of the strong points of this book actually, was that we had Sarah who had known it was Slappy for a while, and she kind of let it happen, which was again a bit strange that she would like do that and just let Slappy write Amy on the walls. Like, I can understand being scared of a dummy that's right in front of you come to life, but if that was me, if I saw a dummy come into my room at the middle of the night, I would have been out there. Like, I would not have stuck around to see what happened next. But Sarah does come clean to Amy that she knows it's Slappy, so they end up joining together to get rid of Slappy. Then Slappy just keeps coming back anyway, and then we have this ending which was actually really clever because the main characters got the parents to see it for themselves, because there was no way their parents were going to believe what happened with Slappy unless they saw with their own two eyes. So they hid in the closet while Slappy came into the room to mess up Sarah's stuff. They got Jed to dress up as Dennis to kind of destroy Slappy in front of them. And it was really gross because this horrible, nasty worm comes out of Slappy's head when he's destroyed. Then we find out Jed's been asleep this entire time, so it wasn't him dressed as Dennis. It was probably actually Dennis who came to life, destroyed Slappy. But yeah, it was just clever of the kids to do that because, again, a lot of the climaxes are usually really easily done. But no, it was actually the kids using their brains, working together, which is a great lesson to learn. Working with your siblings instead of fighting with them all the time to come together and destroy this evil dummy. I will say, I'm again not a fan of the fat phobia in the Night of the Living Dummy books, because in the first one we had, I can't remember her name, the main character, she did this kind of stage show where she did like stand-up comedy with Mr. Wood, who's come to life, and Mr. Wood is saying a lot of fat phobic things as jokes, and then the same thing happens in this one, except it's Amy in her living room with her parents, and she's, you know, with Slappy, and Slappy says some fat jokes to the parents, and it's just not funny. It's not funny in the slightest, obviously, and I don't know why these dummies keep bringing up these fat jokes, so I didn't like that, so it impacted this rating. That's probably why this isn't a 5-star, it's just a 4-star. I would love to see moving forward, especially since there's a Night of the Living Dummy 3 coming up, which I don't know if I ever read, so it'd be nice, it would be really nice if the dummies didn't use fat jokes to be funny, because they're not. So yeah, another one down, and we are halfway through this marathon, and there are only 11 days left. Finished 9 more Goosebumps books, and I am ready to tell you all about them. I am struggling. All of these books just seem to be the same. Like, am I reading the same book 62 times? I do absolutely adore some of them, but then most of them are, again, just a copy and paste of a character, just with a different character name. And same with the plot. The plot is just extremely similar to another book. And we have the cycle now, where it just seems like I'm saying the same thing. In this vlog, I mean, I put all the raw footage together the other day just to see how long it is up to this point. And in raw footage, it comes to 3.5 hours. That's too long, and I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore, because I'm like the Goosebumps series. I'm repeating and recycling all of the things that I'm already saying. It's getting on my nerves. So I've read books 32 through 40. I read these a few days ago. I've been putting off this update for a couple of days, but you know what, let's just rip the band-aid off. So the Barking Ghost follows Cooper, who moves to a small town in Maine, and he meets this girl called Margaret there. Cooper's brother is called Mickey, and Mickey ends up just taking the absolute Mickey, if you ask me. But Cooper is a scaredy cat. Of course, we have, like, almost every single main character or side character is a terrified scaredy cat of something. But it turns out Cooper is scared of leaves, for instance. I can't take the series seriously anymore. I really, really can't. Boggles that might, and we're only like really halfway through. Oh my god. I just don't get or understand why this entire series has characters dedicated to pranking one another. Was pulling cruel pranks on one another like all the rage in the 90s? I don't remember it being so, and I'm a 90s kid. Anyway, Cooper hears these barking sounds at night, which honestly would scare me, especially if it was recurring, and I didn't know where the dogs were coming from, especially in a new place, and there's like woodland around. But I've come to learn in the Goosebumps series to just not be scared, like there's no point. So weirdly enough, like honestly, I can't remember how all of this connects, but weirdly enough, Cooper and Margaret follow these dogs into like this shed thing and swap bodies with these dogs. Honestly. The dogs then, you know, take over Cooper and Margaret's body, and then they just kind of like live as them, as like humans, and that is like their curse kind of thing. And what Cooper and Margaret need to do is to lure the dogs back into the shed thing and get them to switch bodies again. We have one of the really silliest endings ever in a Goosebumps book, which honestly I feel like just happens every single book. It's just like the silliest ending. It was like R.L. Stine sat down and wrote, what is the weirdest way I could possibly wrap this up? So at the end, Margaret and Cooper drag the dog, Margaret and Cooper, who are in their bodies, so they drag their bodies into this shed thing to switch places. But apparently there were chipmunks around, and so Margaret and Cooper end up switching bodies with chipmunks instead of the human selves, and So a few things. The dogs, you know, the ghost dogs or whatever, they talk, and it's like the most ridiculous thing. It just comes across as so weird and ridiculous. There's no better way of saying it than ridiculous. I just cannot. And again, I got like really strong flashbacks to like my Hairiest Adventure and Why I'm Afraid of Bees. We are having this plot of like switching bodies or like some kind of dog thing happen. Like honestly, I think R.L. Stine really loves dogs and he must detest cats because there's barely any books so far with cats in. A couple spring to mind, like Monster Blood, of course. Like, the majority have been about dogs. Do with that what you will. But Cooper is the dumbest character ever. As a dog, he's like, how are we going to get my parents' attention and let them know what's going on? I know, I'll write them a note. They'll recognize my handwriting. You're a dog. You're not going to be able to hold a pen. I honestly cannot fathom this book. And I was actually really excited because the cover is a little bit scary with the dog. I do have a little bit of a fear of dogs. Not the majority. Like, the majority of dogs are amazing. But if a dog was barking at me, I would automatically, like, want to protect myself in case it hurt me. You know what I mean? Like, I am a bit scared of it, so it does play into that fear. But it just goes so ridiculous that it just doesn't even matter anymore. It really doesn't. But Cooper and Margaret, they just seem like the exact same characters that have come before. We have a character come to a new town, meets a new person, they become friends, and they get entangled in this adventure, essentially. Nothing really else to say about this, and I do need to pick up the pace with talking about Goosebumps books, otherwise this will be a 5-hour long vlog. But this gets 2 stars. This is a 2-star book. I don't know what it takes for it to get a 1 star. I think I've only had 1 star so far, but it seems like the majority of Goosebumps books now are like around about 2 star. This one, just 2 star, very middling. Ugh, okay. Horror Camp Jellyjam. The kind of name of it, I never was excited to read it because I never read this as a kid. I don't know if it was made into a TV show episode. I wouldn't have seen it if it was. There's just something so ridiculous. Again, about this, oh my gosh, that is my word of the vlog, ridiculous. This is so annoying, right? Because we have 2 main characters, Wendy and Elliot, and from the beginning, they're separated from their parents, which I thought was quite exciting because I was like, oh, okay, like this is like starting out a little bit differently. We're starting off with like some high stakes. They get separated because they end up writing the trailer that's in the back of the car, or like attached to the car, sorry, and then it gets detached. And I was like, oh, exciting. And then for some reason, right, they land into this like camp in the middle of nowhere and they've never heard of it before. It's Camp Jellyjam, and they're kind of enrolled in this camp straight away. They're like, oh, you know, you can stay here, we can phone your parents and whatever, and like while you're here you can join in on all the activities and stuff. And the kids are like, yeah, sure, okay. But then like days and days and days pass, and while Wendy is more concerned about the fact that they're separated from their parents, Elliot isn't. But then even then, right, okay, even then, if you do go to this camp and they say, yes, like, we will help you and all of that, why would you then, like, stay, like, the night, couple of nights, 3 nights? If I was separated from my parents, even at that age, like, I know they're young, I know they're kids, but even at that age, you're separated from your parents, you've come to the place where you do not know at all, why would you do all of these other things and not focus on rejoining with your parents, especially since you've just been separated from them? So, you know, spending days and days and days just is a huge red flag to me. And it should have been a huge red flag for the characters. It eventually does for Wendy. She does start to clock on, but it's just so mind-boggling. The logic, there's no logic. This is Goosebumps logic. I think it's King Jellyjam Sports Center or something, so all of the activities are sports-based, and the kids there, they get these like winner coins, and when you get 6 winner coins, you get to do the winner's walk, and anybody who does the winner's walk ends up like disappearing, and like nobody hears from them again. Fair enough, that is rather intriguing, but then we have Elliot, who is obsessed with getting like these winner coins, and he eventually does, and Wendy tries to stop him because she realizes people go missing. I got strong Welcome to Camp Nightmare vibes because we have, you know, when someone goes on winner's walk, their stuff gets cleared out. Wendy finally remembers her parents, but Elliot becomes really insufferable. So Wendy's like, what about mum and dad? They couldn't have driven very far before they realized the caravan had come loose. Why haven't they found us? Why hasn't the camp found them? Elliot's like, beat me. Wendy, you're just unhappy because you stink at sports, but I'm having a great time here. Don't mess it up for me, okay? You've been separated by your parents. Why is Elliot obsessed with this camp and being good at sports or whatever? Saying to Wendy, oh, just shut up about our parents. I'm doing really well here. Just like, what? Like, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's just, So the reason why people are disappearing and the winner's walk and what all that is because there is like this monster under Camp Jellyjam called King Jellyjam. He's like this big slime thing and he can't stand the smell of himself. So the kids who win these winner coins and end up doing the winner's walk are the ones who are forced to clean him. Like, they have to clean him constantly so that he can't smell himself. While that was interesting, there's just like some things like beforehand, like some kind of signs that was happening is the earthquakes, like there were earthquakes that were happening. Turns out it was just King Jellyjam burping. And then the way King Jellyjam is defeated is when Wendy says to everyone, stop cleaning him. Everyone stops cleaning him. King Jellyjam smells himself and he dies. Yeah, there's a little bit of a twist ending where he might be back. Genuinely don't care about that. Just the fact that they defeat him by literally doing nothing. I know we're getting into it. This is a 33rd Goosebumps book. Tell us you've run out of ideas without saying you've run out of ideas. You hated the story. But again, it's another 2-star. It's a 2-star book. Not quite 1-star again, but these are very low 2-star. They are just getting so ridiculous. I am hating my life. Revenge of the Garden Gnomes, or Revenge of the Lone Gnomes if you are in America. This one I was actually really excited to read, just because I remember in the Goosebumps movie, because I do actually really love the Goosebumps movies, they're really good fun. The gnomes are mischievous in a really fun way, and I just thought maybe that would translate really well from the source material, and I would really enjoy the story. I also love the cover, and I just think, yes, this is going to be the one, this is going to bring it back. 2 stars. This is another 2-star book. We are constantly having these like 2 stars in a row. All the characters, honestly, like I'm getting mixed up with the characters, but we follow Joe and Mindy, their brother and sister, and Joe like makes Mindy's life hell pretty much. Like Mindy alphabetizes her books by author, like the horror. We also follow Moose, who is their best friend, or like Joe's best friend anyway, and their dad is like obsessed with garden gnomes. He enters like tournaments and things like that, but he ends up getting these like new gnomes, and it's kind of a little bit like, what's it called again? The Scarecrow Walks at Midnight, similar-ish, where we have these garden gnomes come to life and the characters become aware of it. But then, unlike Scarecrow, we have these gnomes, and like I kind of knew this from, you know, their personalities in the movies, but like they are just like mischievous gnomes. They're not really anything sinister or awful, really. They're just very mischievous. So again, a little bit Night and Living Dummy-esque with Slappy, you know, causing havoc. And then we have the recurring things that happen in Stine's books, such as fat phobia, and Moose is the fat character, and it's so prevalent in this actually, because there is a moment when Moose stands on a table and everyone's like, oh my god, get off, you're gonna break it, the weight of you, and things like that. I can only imagine kids reading this thinking it's okay to say that to, you know, kids who are bigger than them, and I just hate that. I hate it so much, and it really does ruin the enjoyment of these books when you cannot even like the main characters. Like honestly, I just can't bring myself to do it. I think the last main characters that I really liked were Eddie and Sue from A Night in Terror Tower. There's also lots of references of the gnomes being like chubby, and we also have like Joe even says to Moose, like Moose's fat face. He says the gnomes have fat little hands, chubby, 2 tiny gnome tears ran down his fat cheeks, and I'm just like, stop focusing so much on body image in these books. I feel like kids have a really hard time with body image anyway. I just don't think the series is going to help kids who are reading this and they might be bigger and they just say this and think like awful thoughts about themselves. Like, I'm not trying to force this kind of opinion on anyone. Like, this is just my personal take. I just don't know if maybe the many reprints of this series takes out all of the fat phobic comments and discussions about body image. I don't know if it does that. We have the gnomes end up enlisting the help of the main characters because they've been separated by their family, so they're like, oh, take us to the store to them so that we can reunite with them. But then they get them to like this basement thing where the other gnomes are, and what they want to do to the main characters is tickle them. Like, they prank them. They're like, haha, like, we're lying, we didn't actually miss them or whatever, we just want to like cause more havoc and, you know, make more pranks and things. And then they want to tickle the main characters, and I'm just like, they're lawn gnomes or garden gnomes or whatever, kick them, smash them. There's no scariness to it when they're tiny little things, so I can just pick it up, smash it. It's a little bit like the dummy ones. And I know like whenever they try and get rid of it, it just keeps on coming back. But remember, like, that's a tiny thing. Like, you can overpower them so easily. At the end, we have a little twist thing where the gnomes have gotten rid of, and the dad ends up getting like this gorilla thing for the garden. And at the end, the gorilla wings, garden ornaments. That's where we're at with the Goosebumps series now. So 2-star, again, this is another 2-star book. I know you're probably thinking, gosh, I'm being such a Debbie Downer right now. However, A Shocker on Shock Street, 4 stars. We actually have a good Goosebumps book again. Like, I really enjoyed this one. Never read it as a kid. Didn't see a TV show episode of it if there was one. And I just thought the story of this was actually really good and a little bit more inventive and original. And we had a couple of characters who I actually really liked. So this one follows Erin and her best friend Marty, and they're huge fans of the horror movie series Shock Street, which is kind of a little bit like Fear Street by R.L. Stine. Not really. In fact, not at all. Because I remember Fear Street, Shock Street. I guess maybe there was some kind of like inspiration there or something. Erin's dad is a designer of like a theme park attraction in like this new like Shock Street kind of theme park. He invites Erin and Marty to come and like test out some of the rides and things like that. So that's really cool. It actually reminds me of my own childhood because my dad, like if you're in the Northeast, you know about the Metro Centre, and there was a theme park in there called Metroland, which isn't there anymore unfortunately, and honestly it was like my childhood, loved it. But my dad did a lot of maintenance there, so when the park closed, me and my siblings would go in after dark, like when it was closed, and we would play in Montezuma's, which was like this play area for kids. But it was like so fun. It was like quite big. There was a huge slide that was like a whole 90-degree angle, and it was so much fun. And me and my siblings would go in there, you know, when it was dark. Being there when nobody else was there was a little bit scary as well. So I got like similar-ish kind of vibes from this. So that's probably why I enjoyed it a little bit more than some of the other ones, is that it kind of gave me some of my own childhood memories, which I can't knock the Goosebumps series too much because I think for a lot of people this series is nostalgic, and the reason why some people might prefer other stories to other ones is because of nostalgia. But I felt nostalgic for this without ever having read it, so I really enjoyed that. But we do have Erin and Marty coming across like different things in this theme park. We have a giant praying mantis and things like that. I am shocked by what happened in Shock Street. All these random things happen. So we have like Wolf Boy and Wolf Girl, and like things just seem to be a little bit off. And then we have this moment where a park director or whatever yells cut, and it turns out that they've been filmed this entire time, and it's for like the new Shock Street movie, which is really awesome. Erin wants to see her dad, but the only way that she can do that is if they go through like this House of Shock thing. But Erin knows from the movies that when you go in there, you never come out alive. So she's really wary about actually doing it. But then Marty ends up running into it and gets shocked. And then Erin sees it happen. She tries to talk to her dad, but then she kind of like stops working. And it turns out that Erin and Marty were both robots. So this entire time, the main characters have been not what we thought they were. They are actually products of this Shock Street movie thing that they're setting up. And they were designed to test out this theme park. A really good moment actually was that Erin talked something about her mother, and the dad was confused like at the start because he didn't know how to respond because Erin asked about her mother. But then at the end it turns out that the reason why he was so shocked was because Erin was never programmed to know of a mother. So how did she know? Like, why did she know anything about a mother? So like, that was really interesting. Like, the intrigue on this was actually quite high. We actually have a good Goosebumps book. I mean, it probably isn't amazing, but because I've sifted through so much crap, like any kind of book that's remotely good, I will latch on to and be like, this was a great Goosebumps book. So yeah, I actually really enjoyed it. It surprised me. I was shocked. While it wasn't really that scary, it just made me think a little bit more, and it made me more excited for the series again, which is good because 35 books in, that's what I want. Now, after The Haunted Mask, the very first one was my favourite book in the series. In fact, I think it's still my favourite Goosebumps book so far. The sequel just could not live up to it, and there are many reasons for this. So this one is getting a 3-star, whereas the first Haunted Mask got a total 5-star rating. We follow Steve, who was like a kind of side character in the first one. So Steve gets like a little bit bullied. I remember a moment where these kids get him to kick a ball, but it turns out it's a concrete ball, and he absolutely hates being pranked. Like, he is saying adamantly that he hates being pranked. It's making him feel depressed. Then on page 12 and 13, we see Steve pranking Carly Beth and how much he loves it. He says, like, for many years, making Carly Beth scream had been our hobby. That's because she was a really good screamer and she would scream at anything. Chuck and I took bets on who could scare Carly Beth the most and who could make her scream. I suppose it was a bit mean, but it was funny too. And sometimes when you know that people are really easy to scare, you have no choice. You have to scare them as often as you can. You've just been bullied and pranked with that concrete ball, which like really hurt you. And yet a couple of pages later, after you're saying how much you hate it, you're saying how much you love pranking Carly Beth and making her scream and how fun it is for you. Like, I have no sympathy for Steve. And what made the first Haunted Mask so good, I think, was because of Carly Beth. And she was relatable, she was sympathetic. We kind of wanted her to prank the other kids because she's been pranked so horribly. But in this one, with Steve, like, he just wants to get his own back on these kids. It's almost a retread of the original Haunted Mask story where Steve goes to the shop that's being closed down one, kind of, but the masks are in boxes, and he ends up like stealing one instead of Carly Beth, who really talks her way into getting one and giving him money for it. We have Steve run away with one. So again, we have no sympathy for Steve. He puts it on, realizes it can't come off. Even after Carly Beth warned him not to put one on, he still does it anyway. And then Carly Beth ends up helping him get it off. Not as, you know, claustrophobic as the first book was. I think a lot of it was that I just didn't really think the story was that interesting the second time round, because we are literally just having the same storyline of a haunted mask that won't come off your face. So when you've seen it once, I don't think you really need to say it again. Kind of got the same way with the Night of the Living Dummy series. By the third book, I was like, okay, I don't need to see a dummy come to life again and cause pranks. You know, it's the same with this one, but this was just the second book. In the Months of Blood series, don't even get me started. We have that thing where the main character lies to us, so the mask was missing before he puts it on, but then a page later, he was like, oh, I remember, I put it somewhere else instead. Like, I cannot trust main character narrators in these books, because they just constantly lie to you to make you scared, or make you think a certain way when it's totally false. I hate it. There was another dream within a dream sequence in this too, which really annoyed me, but this Haunted Mask 2 just had no originality to it. I remember still enjoying the TV show episode of it, but overall 3-star, because as much as I think it was unoriginal, it still had that Haunted Mask element, and I do love the Haunted Mask as a concept. We do have Carly Beth in here still, and I do really enjoy her as a character. There were a couple of moments where I was like, I don't know how Steve will get out of it, but still, it did nothing to add to the series. Unfortunately, didn't live up to the first Haunted Mask. The Headless Ghost is another one that I had high hopes for, and I still gave it 3 stars because I think this was actually still a really good read. A few things surprised me. I really did enjoy the atmosphere in this. It was very atmospheric because we have Stephanie and Dwayne, and they live in a small town where the only kind of touristy attraction is Hill House, which obviously, if you know, like, the Haunting of Hill House, you'll know it's a bit of a spooky place, but this is their version of Hill House. So we have this story of a boy who was like this awful brat from years and years ago. He literally tried to kill a cat. I think he threw the cat out the window, if I remember correctly, and he was disappointed that the cat didn't die. And then the boy ends up seeing a ghost, and the ghost steals his head, and he dies. And that was like a little bit graphic and brutal, not gonna lie. Like, that's a little bit like, oh my gosh. And I really enjoyed that because, one, I had no sympathy for this kid for trying to kill a cat. So that kind of story, that kind of like folktale-esque kind of story really added to the atmosphere in this. I thought that was really good. And then we have Stephanie and Dwayne who, you know, in the present day want to find the head of this boy, and they decide to stay in Hill House after the tour has ended, when it closes, and they try to look for this head. But I really didn't like Stephanie and Dwayne as characters, quite honestly. Again, we have Stephanie who is just constantly pulling pranks and things. Dwayne falls for it every single time. It ends up getting to a point where it doesn't make sense, because Dwayne even says, look, I'm not following you, I'm not doing anything unless you promise not to pull any pranks. And I'm sure, I'm getting deja vu from another one, I'm sure this has happened before. And then Stephanie's like, Dwayne, you're way too easy to scare. And then he's like, let's just get back to the tour. She's like, no way, Dwayne, this is fun, let's try the next room, come on. When she saw that I wasn't following her, she said, I won't scare you like that anymore, promise. I saw that her fingers were crossed, but I followed her anyway. What choice did I have? What choice do you have? Leave. Get out of there. You genuinely do not need to be there. Just leave. You know she's going to keep pulling pranks, and that's going to be where most of the scares come from in this book. From her pulling a prank. Eliminates any kind of sympathy again for Dwayne, because he is just letting it happen. He is saying he's too scared to do it, but he does it anyway. And he's like, I know I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I know you're going to say, oh, but they're kids. Every single Goosebumps book is the same thing. It's all the time. They're just pulling pranks on one another, and one of them just follows another one. And it's just like, oh, but the kids, you know, they don't know any better. I know 5-year-olds who wouldn't do that. Kids are smarter than you think. But R.L. Stine portrays them in a way that makes them infuriatingly insufferable and dumb. Kids are not dumb. That's kind of why my rating for this slid, because it was starting at a bit of a 4-star. I like the atmosphere and stuff, but then it just went down. But then they end up finding the head really, really easily. And if the head was that easy to find, why then did this ghost that can go through walls and things not find it sooner? Because this ghost has been trapped for like, what, 100 years or something? Like, surely it would have found the head on its own. I don't get it. It just asks you to be stupid in order to read the Goosebumps books. Like, I'm not stupid. The ghost should have found it years and years ago. It doesn't make sense. I did kind of like the ending where it turns out that the 2 tall people are also ghosts. But again, I got flashbacks to, which one was it? Oh my god, there's so many of them. The one where they're barking at them at the end. Was it the barking ghost? No, it wasn't. Oh, Ghost Beach. Ghost Beach. It reminded me of Ghost Beach. The end of Ghost Beach. Again, just no originality to it. It was a really good ghost story to begin with. It just fell through the cracks. Overall, it was fine. I saw The Abominable Snowman in Pasadena on a lot of people's bottom list. Like, a lot of people didn't really like this one, and I concur, I didn't really like it all that much either, so I gave this one a 2-star. I thought it was fine. It's more of an adventure like Deep Trouble was too. Like, there isn't really anything scary about it, but we have that adventurous aspect of it, and I don't really enjoy that in a Goosebumps book. I want to be scared. I don't want to be led on this ridiculous adventure because, okay, right, I want to get into it. We follow siblings Jordan and Nicole who live in like really hot Pasadena, and their dad is this nature photographer, and he is given this opportunity to go to Alaska to photograph this abominable snowman. Like, there have been sightings of this abominable snowman, and he has to go and take a photo of it. So this is another case in point where adults or parents even, in the Goosebumps series are just so unbelievably stupid, is that the dad takes Nicole and Jordan to this really dangerous place, and a lot of the times he leaves them to their own devices in like this really dangerous place, and it just doesn't make any sense. The main characters didn't infuriate me as much as the dad did. So like the snowman is like encased in ice kind of thing sometimes, and the dad just leaves the kids with the snowman every now and then. He's just like, okay, like this is really dangerous, like we shouldn't really be here, but I'm gonna leave you kids with the snowman by yourselves so that we can move the story along. I genuinely don't get why parents in these books are so willfully ignorant. But then it turns out that this book is mainly actually not even about the snowman, but about this magic snow, because this snow, when it hits somebody, it freezes them and you can't really get them out of the ice. So we have a moment, I cannot remember what the friend is called, but a moment where she's hit with the snow, she turns into ice, and they end up getting the abominable snowman to come back to life in order to melt the ice by kind of like hugging her sort of thing, and then off he trots or whatever, freezes again, and then they take the snow back to Pasadena, and then it ends with the snow being hurled at one of the main characters' faces. Is this about a snowman, like a really scary snowman, or is it about magic ice that freezes people? Because to me it just felt more about the snow than anything else. I mean, one, I wasn't really expecting that. I thought it would be about this creature. Two, I'm just like, I didn't care. Okay, they froze. Great. But also how they got them to unfreeze by getting the snowman to unfreeze her was just, again, ridiculous. So again, did not enjoy this one at all. 2 stars. How I Got My Shrunken Head is again another one that I was really excited to read because I don't think I ever read it. I like the story behind like shrunken heads and that kind of whole thing. But this one again just took a great concept and made it a little bit disappointing. So this one is getting a 3-star. It wasn't terrible, it wasn't fantastic. This one follows Mark, who is gifted a shrunken head by his aunt, who is like this kind of explorer person on this jungle island of Balladora, and he ends up getting invited to go there, so he goes there. And I do really enjoy the jungle setting. I love anything to do with jungle, and I love that kind of vibe that I was going for. Really thought that was really well done. We have like quicksand and like the trees and all of that is really nicely pictured in this, which I was like, okay, fair enough. But the main character is very obnoxious, so I really do not like him. There's also this kind of concept of jungle magic that he has, and I think the shrunken head gives him that kind of power, but it just means that any situation he gets into, like say the quicksand for instance, is very easily solved with this jungle magic. Like it solves all of his problems. Don't get me started. The trope of something going missing, but it turns out another character has moved it, goes on far too long in this book as well. It's very drawn out. And not just that, but we have fake scares in almost every chapter. That does nothing to advance the plot. It was an over-reliance on fake scares. Literal quicksand, my expectations of Goosebumps. Again, this is another case of where the concept just outlived the actual execution. I have nothing else to say about this book, quite honestly. I'm just dragging it out at this point. Disappointed, didn't cover it. Finally, for this update, Night of the Living Dummy 3. This one is, again, the 3rd reiteration of the Dummy series, and I think I preferred the 2nd book over the 1st book, like, just, like, very slightly, because it focused more on Slappy. The trajectory of the Night of the Living Dummy series was going up, and then it just went psh with this book. I will say it is hilarious because Slappy genuinely lives up to his name, because we follow Trina, whose dad gives her Slappy, and after Trina reads the words to bring him to life, like honestly, why don't people just burn that goddamn piece of paper with the magic incantation on to make him alive? You can solve everyone's problem and burn that piece of paper. But anyway, when Trina brings him to life, Slappy slaps her. I should not be laughing, but it's just hilarious because he literally just slaps Trina across the face. I'm sure he did the same thing to Amy in Night of the Living Dummy 2. He just slaps her. Slappy just loves slapping kids. But what I don't get with Trina is why did she not throw Slappy away as soon as Slappy slapped her? Why would you keep that around? You know that dummy is possessed when it slaps you. Why would you keep it? Even though I know, like, as soon as she got rid of it, it would come back anyway. But still, the way characters act just doesn't make sense. So at least try. So this one just feels like part 1 of Night of the Living Dummy and part 2 of Night of the Living Dummy mashed together as one. It was like, I've already done this story 2 times, let's do it again, but this time mix 1 and 2 together. So we have this entire thing with the dummy playing pranks or whatever, and then, you know, someone's getting blamed for it for the entire book, and then it turns out at the end that it is the dummy doing the pranks. But this also had the combined element of part 2, where, because like, you've got other dummies on the cover and stuff, that's because there's more dummies in the attic, which added a little bit more of a scare factor, but it's never really utilized, because at the end, when Trina says the magic words again that brings dummies to life, the other dummies do come to life, but they kind of overwhelm Slappy and take him down. I'm not 100% sure why they would take Slappy down when they're all dummies. They should really be family, right? But they're just not. Like, all Trina has to do is sit back and watch it happen. And yeah, so that is kind of like the end of part 2, Night of the Living Dummy 2, when it was, I think it was Dennis, who comes in, you know, smashes Slappy's head, and then runs out, and then it turns out it probably was really Dennis who did that and not the brother dressed up as Dennis. You know, so we have the exact same kind of ending as part 2, combined with most of what happened in part 1. We just get this book, so like, there was again, like The Haunted Mask 2, no originality to it, didn't think the characters stood out. I was starting to get really fed up with Slappy, honestly, just didn't care for it. Sometimes the formula works, so we could have had more dummy kind of books in the series, but because of the way they're written, it just becomes a really tired cliche, when there could have been something different that you could have done with the story. It didn't need to be the same copy and paste characters with the same copy and paste plot. You know, you could have done something new and had more of a spooky kind of atmosphere with this, especially since we had the premise of having more dummies in the attic. It could have been a full-on dummy invasion, but that just didn't happen. So I'm very let down by it. I'm mostly let down by a lot of the Goosebumps books, especially ones in series. I'm just so glad they didn't do a Night at Terror Tower 2. I'm really glad they didn't do that. The end kind of thing, so we have Zane, who is a cousin who stays over, and Zane plays a prank on them. So Trina's way of getting back is after Slappy has been taken down to give Zane Slappy. Zane takes Slappy home, and then at the end, Slappy wins. Doesn't make sense because Slappy was supposed to have been like defeated, but obviously not. And again, why didn't she just burn the piece of paper so that this whole cycle of bullshit doesn't have to keep happening? And it actually gets 2 stars. Like, I think maybe the first and the second Night of the Living Dummy books both got 4 stars, and then this one just rockets down to a 2 star. It really just eliminated any respect I had for Slappy, to be honest. It's currently 2:30 a.m. in the morning, and I have just done some reading sprints with Ali from Hardback Hoarder. They were Goosebumps themed reading sprints. It was so fun. We had a Goosebumps drinking game. I will leave the graphic here for the actual drinking game. Both me and Ali had to chug once during it, and I finished 3 glasses of drink. So I started off on pink gin and lemonade, and then moved on to vodka and lemonade. So that was actually so much fun. And yeah, it's now 2:30 a.m. I have work. Well, I start at 9:30. Is that right? Anyway, I wanted to do an update first because it is essentially the 26th of September now, which means I have 4 days left, and I have finished some more Goosebumps books. In this batch of books is one of my most hated books and one of the worst books I've probably ever read. I'm only on 2 battery now. Why didn't I charge this up beforehand? I had plenty of time to charge. Bad Hair Day was a decent book. It follows Tim and his really bright sister Ginny, and Tim is obsessed with this magician called Amazo, and Tim ends up getting tickets to see Amazo in action, and he takes Ginny along. Ginny like threatens him and blackmails him into taking her. She is that character, that really annoying sibling character. Ginny is very bratty and gets him to take her along. So then he ends up going along, and he's picked to be in part of this magician show, and he is part of the show. He goes to a trapdoor kind of thing, whatever. And then he comes across Amazo, or at least a voice of Amazo coming from the dressing room, and he's very abrupt with Tim, and Tim, his illusion of his hero is broken, and so he decides to steal a bag of magic tricks to pay him back. I wasn't the biggest fan of that. But I will say that it was actually quite funny at times, this one, because we had this moment a bit later on where the bag of tricks have kind of come to life. Like, obviously it bites Tim in the butt, but these snakes like inside this bag also come to life. There's like these glass snakes, and Tim just like throws them across the room, and it's just so random. It's surprisingly funny. It doesn't sound funny when I say it, but it was like a bit of a surprisingly funny moment. For some reason as well, Ginny ends up eating a carrot from this bag thing, and she turns into a rabbit, and then Tim has to like save her ass, essentially. Takes her to Amazo, and Amazo turns out to be a rabbit himself. The actual Amazo person who they see on stage is actually a dummy. Just some random twist of fate, random ending. Turns out Tim wants to be his assistant, and he gets turned into a rabbit so that he can be the rabbit that gets pulled out of Amazo's hat. It's fine, nothing new is carved in this book. A bit of a strange and bizarre concept anyway. I guess it felt a little bit Monster Blood, because with this bag of tricks, things just kept multiplying, and uncontrollably so, and it's just like rather annoying just saying the same thing over and over, but it's annoying for me, honestly, it really is. Amazo was cursed by a sorcerer, and it was kind of like the same with Monster Blood, the first one, where the main character's aunt, I'm forgetting names, where the main character's aunt is cursed by the sorcerer, and we have other curses by sorcerers in the series as well. It just seems like being cursed by a sorcerer is the number one go-to for twists, apparently. I didn't really care all much for it. I gave this one 2 stars. It was absolutely fine. Did make me chuckle a few times, but other than that, rather forgettable. Nothing scary. Again, it's not a scary Goosebumps book, so it's one that I would never ever pick up again. Egg Monsters from Mars follows Dana, who his younger sister Brandy is having this birthday party, and she wants everyone to go on this egg hunt. Dana ends up coming across an egg that like pulsates and has like these blue veins and things, and that was a bit of a gross visual. Like, it was pretty good in that regard. So then Dana ends up kind of keeping it, and it turns into a monster, of course. But then Dana takes this monster thing to a scientist, and the scientist wants to kind of study it, but he kidnaps Dana and locks him in the laboratory to do with the fact that Old could be exposed to disease or whatever. It's kind of a bit scary in that regard, because we have a kid who is actually kidnapped and forced against his will to stay in this laboratory, and that's really, really scary. I'm a little bit tipsy right now as well, not gonna lie. When Dana's like missing, the dad comes to the laboratory like literally hours later, or like the day after or something like that, and is looking for Dana. I don't understand why he would go to this random laboratory in this town. There's many places to check for Dana, and Dana's never mentioned once about having any kind of interest in this laboratory. So I just feel like that was rather random. Like, I don't understand why the tab was there, but it happens during a scene where Dana is locked behind like this glass that he can see through, but his dad can't hear him. So we have Dana like screaming for his dad, and his dad's right there and not hearing him. So I'm thinking like this whole kind of bizarre reason the dad's there is literally just for that scene. And it was a pretty good scene. This book also is not really about the egg monsters from Mars or anything like that. It's mainly about the scientist who's locked Dana up, and Dana can't get out, he can't do anything, and he's been force-fed macaroni and cheese, which he hates. And honestly, like, what kid hates macaroni and cheese? Like, you should be locked up. But it is really intense and scary, the fact that, you know, we have the scientist wanting to kind of kill him, because it kind of escalates into the scientist wanting to make the boy too cold and like freeze him to death. Like, that's scary. And then he's saved by the egg monsters or whatever, and he gets away. Happy ending, right? What's really bizarre about this, though, is the ending. I'm trying not to let it ruin the book, but the ending is just so bizarre. So literally at the very end, I have to read this out. Yeah, we have Dana get back home and he's saved. And then at the end, what a day, what a beautiful, perfect, normal day. And then halfway across Anne's lawn, I stopped. I crouched down on the grass and I laid the biggest egg you ever saw. This kid's literally just shit on someone else's lawn. Honestly, that's how the book ends. Stine just drops random what the fuck endings, and he doesn't ask himself whether he should drop these what the fuck endings. So 3 stars. I would personally give it 2 stars, but the way Copile works with like the ratings for each individual aspect of the books, it's making me give it 3 stars. The Beast from the East is so bizarre in a good way. In a good way. Yeah, in a good way. I'm saying that as a question because I don't actually quite know. I'm still processing it, but I think it's a little bit good. This was very Maze Runner-esque, but we follow Ginger and her twin brothers, and they end up getting lost in the woods, essentially. And they come across as part of like the forest where the trees look different, there's like different colours of things, and it's really, really weird. And they come across this weird creature, and then they start playing tag. These creatures force these kids to play tag, essentially. But what's pretty good about it, actually, and I did kind of like it, it's weird, but I kind of liked it, it's the fact that if they didn't tag like one of the beasts within a certain time period, then they will be eaten. So there is an actual like high stakes kind of story to this, and I really enjoyed that. But the only trouble is this game of tag, again, it didn't make sense. They kept making up rules as they went along, and it just felt like R.L. Stine wrote this like on a whim, and he did not plan it whatsoever. So he kept writing and writing, and he'd get to a moment where something would happen. So like say one of the kids tagged someone, but then they're like, oh no, you can't actually tag me because of this reason. They would move on, and then they would have to try and find another beast to tag or whatever. So it just felt like rules kept being added as the book went on, and it made it like a little bit harder to enjoy. I still kind of enjoyed it. It was still rather exciting. Not very scary, but exciting. We do end up getting to the part of the book where they are about to be eaten or whatever. Then of course we have that, is it a Deus Ex Machina or kind of thing? Where like something comes out of nowhere. So another rule that's thrown in is that you can't play with people who are a different level than you. And the fact that it was never really brought up before, and these kids are a different level to all the beasts, so they're like, oh, we're sorry, we were playing with you, and you are a different level, so we can't actually eat you. So that's how you get back home. Take this easy route home, and you will be safe, whatever. And that's how, essentially, the book ends. Well, I mean, not exactly how the book ends, because they do run into a beast who is the same level as them. I hate endings like that where they're just like kind of saved last minute. Like one of the worst ones was the Monster Blood 2 ending where the Monster Blood expired, so like everything went back to normal. Like I hate endings like this, and this has an ending similar to that. So not a fan of the ending, but it's still got a 3-star, but a higher 3-star than the other 2 books that I've just mentioned. Okay, Say Cheese and Die Again. I'm actually appalled at this book. This is the worst Goosebumps book I've read so far, and one of the worst books I've ever read. I'm not even embellishing it. I'm not trying to be dramatic, but this actually is a god-awful book. It's actually appalling, and I hate it. And that's saying a lot when I actually loved the first Say Cheese and Die book, but this one, Say Cheese and Die Again, I mean, it's a 1-star. For one, it's a 1-star book. 100%. 2, I mean, I haven't really had the best luck with some of the sequels from this series, but and this one is a continuation of the first one, whereas like say like Night of the Living Dummy, it would change characters, but this one is continuation. So you would think that the characters from the first book, after the ordeal that they had in that book with the camera that was, you know, making bad things happen, that they would learn from that experience, that they would not do it again. But just like the characters in Monster Blood, they do not learn. Not just that, but there is no continuity in this series whatsoever, because all of the things that the characters learn from the first book, including how to defeat the evil camera, is conveniently forgotten about. Well, not even just forgotten about, but changed. So in the first Say Cheese and Die book, the way to reverse a photo was to tear it up. And then we come to this one, where the characters should know that, but then they kind of don't. And they allow this thing to happen again, and then when it gets to a moment where they are like, oh, should we tear it up? They're like, oh no, what if it tears us up? What if it tears us into pieces? You've rode this ride before. You know what happens when you tear up a photo. Also, what happened to the bullies at the end of the first Say Cheese and Die? The ones who took a photo of themselves. Why didn't you clear that up? Anyway, I digress. This one is told from Greg's POV, whereas the first Say Cheese and Die book was told in third person, which I actually really liked. And it's probably why I like the first book way more than this one as well, because Greg is an awful main character to follow. He is a moron. He is an actual moron. He does a paper, like it was supposed to be about like a real life paper. I can't remember what the paper was supposed to be about, but his teacher ends up grading him very low because he talks about this camera, which obviously no one's going to believe. So he writes a whole paper on it, expecting the teacher to believe it. So when the teacher gives him a low rating, Greg sets out to find this camera to prove that he was telling the truth. That's just strike number 1. So he does end up finding the camera again, and he runs into John, who is like this person who has taken over the house where the camera was last seen. And Greg takes a photo of John. John ends up getting his foot stabbed, or like he steps on this big nail thing and has to be taken to the hospital. And Greg, even after this has happened and he knows it's because of the camera, even though he knows he's just put somebody's life in danger, he still takes that camera to school so that he can put more people's lives in danger just to prove a point, just to prove to this teacher that what he's saying is real. So selfish and awful. And honestly, like, that is bad in itself, but what makes this actually like one of the worst books I've read, and one of like the worst, definitely the worst Goosebumps book, is the fat phobia. And I know I've mentioned it before in other Goosebumps books, and it's very common in Goosebumps books to have like some kind of fat shaming in them, but it is not as bad as how it is in this book. This book actually uses people, or like overweight kids, as body horror. The way that it's portrayed in this is absolutely repugnant. So obviously when you take a photo of something, it shows you something really bad is going to happen, like a horrifying thing. So when Greg gets his photo taken, the photo comes out and he is overweight. So this is what happens. I recognized my face, but I didn't recognize my body. At first I thought my head was resting on top of a giant balloon, and I realized that the giant balloon was me. In the photo I weighed about 28 stone. No joke, 28 stone. I gave to the photo studying my round face and my even rounder body. I had about 8 chins. My cheeks were puffed way out. The collar on my t-shirt was hidden under one of my flabby chins. The shirt was stretched tight over my chest and only came down to my belly, which bulged nearly to the ground. I looked like a really gross mountain of pudding. Stop laughing, I snapped at Cherry. It isn't funny. It's very funny, she insisted. She grabbed the photo, raised it to her face, and started laughing all over again. You're bigger than Sumo 1 and Sumo 2, she exclaimed. I grabbed the photo back. I stared at the folds of flab hanging down from my cheeks. My face was so huge and puffy, my eyes looked like tiny pig eyes. And my stomach hung down over my fat knees. All the way to school, I kept picturing my photo, kept picturing my flabby face, my enormous 28 stone body. So if there is a kid reading this who is overweight, they're probably going to read that and think, oh, so this is supposed to be the horrifying aspect of this book, is the fact that Greg is going to gain weight. It is honestly the worst fat phobia I've seen in the series to date. It keeps getting called all these horrible names. Not even just that, but the teacher joins in on the bullying. Samo, he says, my fingers were so fat I had trouble poking them into the pocket. My hands felt like squishy balls of dough. It was too blobby to make a fist. I mean, there are way more instances of using Greg being overweight as body horror. It's offensive. And then again, like with the character of Greg, again, he doesn't learn. So when finally everything is brought back to normal, everything's fine again, what does Greg do? Greg still wants revenge. And he still wants to get the teacher back. So he's thinking at the end, oh, I'm going to take a photo of my teacher to get him back as revenge. And again, like, you've just seen what the camera's just bloody done. Why would you do that? And then, of course, it doesn't go to plan, and the teacher ends up taking a photo of the entire classroom. We have the exact same ending as the first day of Choose and Die, where we have the bullies taking a photo, and we don't know what's going to happen to them next. The exact same ending in this one, because we don't know what's going to happen to the classroom of kids when the photo develops. Exact same kind of twist ending. It worked well in the first one, does not work well in this one. I also feel like this is just like an insult to people's intelligence. I would never, ever, ever recommend this one. And considering how much I loved the first day of Choose and Die, I was so hopeful for this one. Hated it. Hated every word of it. I mean, you can't get worse than Say Cheese and Die Again. So Ghost Camp was a step up, but I'm kind of sick of having camp stories now because they are starting to feel a little bit samey. Even if like the overall plot's different, it still just feels very samey in atmosphere. So this book gets a 3-star from me, and it is because of the atmosphere. Like, I do like the idea of the ghosts. There isn't really any tension in this because Harry and his brother Alex go to Camp Moon Spirit, where essentially, I'm just going to say it now, everyone's a ghost. And there is this thing where these ghosts have to possess people to kind of like live on or something. And Harry and Alex are like the next kind of victims. Like, honestly, not a lot happens up until that point. Like, Harry sees weird random stuff happening before that. He sees like a girl's head come off, but then everything's fine. Stuff like that. And then it gets to like the only parts worth mentioning are the parts where Harry and Alex have clocked on what's going on. They try to run away. All the ghosts come. They want to possess them, but then they end up fighting over each other to possess them, and they end up like defeating themselves. Again, it's that whole like horror camp Jellyjam where the King Jellyjam thing ended up defeating himself just by sniffing himself. Kind of same in this one. The ghosts just defeat themselves by fighting with one another. But we do have a twist ending where it turns out that one of them has possessed Harry's younger brother. So like, that was a good twist. But honestly, overall, and I'm probably not going to talk too much more about this one because there's just not much to say. It was another okay book. But after Say Cheese and Die Again, I was just really enjoying my time. It is scary that ghosts want to possess you, but it's not scary overall. How to Kill a Monster, I also have a bit of a love-hate relationship with. It is a pretty strong 3-star book. However, it does follow Gretchen and her stepbrother Clock. They go to stay at their grandparents' house. Oh my god, I've run out of breath. They go to their grandparents' mansion thing in like the swamps. And the grandparents, for some reason, because obviously adults are morons in every single book, they leave the kids in this big mansion where this monster lives in a room. They aren't allowed to go in this room, but obviously they're kids. But like, why would you have a monster in the house with your kids and without actually telling them? They do actually leave them letters that obviously they're not going to say straight away, and it's to tell them about like the monster. I'm just like, why didn't you just tell the kids to their face that there was a monster in the house? And if they open the door, all havoc's gonna like be wreaked. Or no, all havoc's gonna be wrecked. No, all hell's gonna break loose. But the most exciting part of this is the fact that Gretchen and Clark do get like chased around a bit around this mansion, and it's a little bit scary, a bit intense, and it is like quite close every now and then. So I did really enjoy that. This was another case where the main characters were just a little bit too lucky. The monster starts to speak English and says to Gretchen, "Are you a human?" And Gretchen says yes. And the monster says, "I'm allergic to humans," and then dies. If that was the case, why didn't the grandparents defeat the monster? Just being around the monster, they would have defeated it, right? I don't get it. The grandparents make no sense. So honestly, the ending is frustrating as well. So there are 2 letters that the grandparents have left them, and they didn't really read the second letter. So Gretchen and Clark go into the woods or whatever. Then they remember that there is another letter. So they read the other letter to say that this monster has other brothers and sisters out there, and it's wanting, this monster back. That's pretty much the end. They hear like howls or whatever, or like monster noises in the woods. And I'm just like, these grandparents, seriously? Why would you leave them by themselves in this mansion house that is surrounded by monsters, with a monster inside the house? These grandparents should not be looking after children. It just never really explained. Nothing's explained. Nothing's ever explained. And I just really didn't enjoy that. So I did really still like the exciting chase scenes, and some of it was tense and intense. So it's still 3 stars. Legend of the Lost Legend was one that I've never read before either. But this follows Justin and Marissa, who are camping with their dad in the forest of Bravania. And the dad is hunting for like the manuscript of this lost legend. And this one is actually rather, again, like another like adventure-y kind of book. Nothing really too scary. And I like that aspect of it. I like the setting. The setting's pretty good. But it is very random. It's like a lot of things mushed together, because this lady on the cover, she's like this Viking person who in the middle of the night tells the kids that they have like this test to do, and the dad won't wake up for some strange reason. Like conveniently, the dad doesn't wake up, and then Justin and Marissa end up doing like these test things. They come together, and then just loads of random stuff happens to them. And then the kind of twisty ending kind of thing is that they do end up reuniting with their dad. They all end up finding the manuscript for this lost legend, but it turns out that anybody who finds a lost legend becomes lost themselves. That's the way it ends. I kind of like that ending though, because it kind of feeds into the whole mythology aspect of this lost legend that everyone's so like desperate to find. And so yeah, I found that a little bit clever. But other than that, it just so random. It doesn't really all go together either. I just felt like it was like a lot of short stories in one kind of thing. And that's the kind of general gist I got from it. It never got boring, so that's the only thing I can really give it. Characters didn't infuriate me either, which is also another huge plus. It's another one done, and I'm so glad. Attack of the Jack-o'-lanterns honestly was a hugely missed opportunity. This started out being what could have been a 4-star book, and it could have been so good. However, this book is only getting a 2-star from me, and that's for several reasons. There are so many twist endings of Goosebumps, and although I mentioned this a lot, loads of moments where you have to try and suspend your belief. Oh, I still don't know what that scene is. But this one just got way too ridiculous. Way too ridiculous. We follow Drew and Walker, and they love Halloween, and they want to go trick-or-treating. And honestly, I love Goosebumps books that are set during Halloween. Like The Haunted Mask, like that's just so good. But Drew and Walker are trying to get back at Lee and Tabby, and like it's just all like a revenge story essentially, because Lee and Tabby have ruined their Halloweens. They did this really cruel prank actually, like a few years before. That's actually rather traumatizing. Why are kids obsessed with pulling these horrible pranks? Anyway, Drew and Walker are just like obsessing over getting them back. But then they come across like these these like pumpkin head things that take them to this different neighborhood. And when I say take them, like, they literally just follow them there. Like, they didn't have to follow strangers to this random neighborhood. But they do anyway. They go to this random neighborhood where these pumpkin head things force the kids to trick-or-treat constantly. Like, go to their house, trick-or-treat, like, never stop trick-or-treating kind of thing. And like, the kids have no choice. They have to trick-or-treat, and they keep getting candy, and then the pumpkin head things force them all to eat them, and then the cycle continues and stuff. The twist moment happens where these pumpkin head things, they slam these pumpkins on their heads, and then it turns out that they're actually aliens from another planet, and that this whole thing was orchestrated by David Walker. It doesn't make sense because we've been following Drew the entire book, and she, like, as the pumpkin heads were making them do things, we were in her head, okay? So it doesn't make sense that she was in on the entire thing, when in her head, okay, when she's narrating this book, she has no idea what's going on, and she's terrified, and she's scared. Like, why would you be thinking this and kind of have that twist and like, oh, I was in on it all along? They were in on it all along. It wasn't a lie. It doesn't make sense. Like, that's not right. That's not right. You can't have a character lying like that to the audience, to the reader, then having this twist ending that comes out of nowhere. And the fact that the two people who helped them, Sean and Shauna or something, the aliens from another planet come to help. There was also like a moment during the live show as well. It made me so angry. Like, I had like a proper physical reaction to this, and I'll show you now because it just, oh my god, like, this series is just making me so angry. But we actually have like one of the scariest moments in Goosebumps history happen, okay? So we have the characters go to this house and knock on the door trick-or-treating, and this old lady answers the door and she's like, oh my god, I love your costumes. Please come in and show my husband. And I was like, kids, don't go in there. That's a silly idea. But they go in, of course. And then they come into this room where there's loads of kids crying. And the couple are like, you're not allowed to leave, and like, you have to stay here forever. We want to look at your costumes forever. And that's like really terrifying. I was like, oh my god, this is so good. And the start of the next chapter, that was my daydream. It literally makes me want to throw this book right now. And if it was not now 3:15 a.m. with an old lady, bless her, sleeping downstairs, I would throw this book right over there. Because this book, it insults your intelligence. So I tried not to let all of that ruin the book, because again, it's what I expect from the series. It's just really hard to. It's just really, really hard to. So 2 stars. I was loving the atmosphere too, and I love the idea of the pumpkin head thing, but it just got so ridiculous. I didn't like it. And I had high hopes for this one. I wanted to love this so bad. Finally we get to an actually good Goosebumps book again. So Vampire Breath, I had never read as a kid. Again, we are seeing the theme here. This one gets a 3-star, but again, it's let down by a lot of things, but it's a high-ish 3-star and definitely a good Goosebumps book. We follow Freddy and Cara, they're like best friends, and they discover this like hidden room in the house, and they go into like this door in the wall kind of thing, and they discover this coffin. Inside the coffin is Vampire Breath, and then this man appears who calls himself Count Nightwing. And Count Nightwing wants this Vampire Breath back so that it can take him back to his time, like 100 years before. So then we have this chase with like Freddy and Cara trying to keep this Vampire Breath away from him and stuff. But then the Vampire Breath ends up taking them all back like 100 years to Count Nightwing's time. There we have Freddy and Cara trying to escape this like gothic kind of castle. And I was really enjoying that story. A little bit scary-ish because Count Nightwing is like saying I'm so thirsty and stuff, and being taken to a different time like A Night in Terror Tower is a bit of a scary concept, especially when you don't know how to get back home. So I like that. I like all that. Don't get me wrong. Things happen. They end up getting back home and they bring Count Nightwing with them, which they didn't mean to do. But then it turns out Count Nightwing is Freddy's granddad, who we had no idea was sleeping in the house. And the whole family are vampires. Well, apart from Cara. Cara's like the friend, and she's like, oh, I knew you were weird kind of thing. I'm just like, I mean, I don't hate it. Not that I have to question myself. I have to forgive it because at this point I just feel like I'm being negative all the time, and I don't mean to be. I really don't mean to be. It just, a lot of it frustrates me so much to like no end. It wasn't bad. Like, I didn't have a physical reaction to this like I did with Attack of the Jack-o'-lanterns. It was good. It did feel very classic vampire at some points and a little Bram Stoker Dracula-ish. Not really, but kind of reaching here a little bit just to find the positives. But I did like the non-stop kind of action of this one because we constantly had a bit of a chase sequence, a little bit like How to Kill a Monster. It was good. I'm not hating on it. I kind of liked it. It was fine. I am so tired. Book 49 out of 62. I have 13 Goosebumps books left. And it will end eventually. So I've managed to finish 2 more Goosebumps books, and it is the morning of the 28th. So I have today, tomorrow, and Thursday to finish off 11 Goosebumps books, which is honestly doable because I'm off work until Saturday. So, Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. I mean, I feel good. I feel good about finishing on time. I feel like I've already hit the rock bottom with the Goosebumps series, I hope. It's only up from there. So, I'm feeling pretty good and positive about the rest of this kind of video-ish. And I don't even think I'll be talking too much about these next 2 books anyway. They weren't really all that memorable. Not really my faves. But anyway, let's talk Goosebumps. Calling All Creeps was one that I never read as a kid, but it follows Ricky, who is constantly teased and harassed and bullied at school. Like, honestly, I did feel really bad for the guy. Again, though, it's very standard in Goosebumps to have these really severely bullied kids as protagonists, which is fine, but we don't need every single main character or every single side character to constantly be harassed and bullied. And it's just, at this point, I'm getting really fed up with the depiction of kids in Goosebumps series. Like, I know I'm still nitpicking, it's just my brand now, but it just doesn't have to be in every single book. There can be a Goosebumps book without bullying at some point. Well, actually, Beware the Snowman, the next book, doesn't have any bullying in. I might have just deflated my own point. Whenever there's a Goosebumps book that involves school, there's constantly bullying. Anyway, Ricky is fired from the school newspaper because he does a lot of silly stuff. So he spilled Pepsi on Tasha's kind of computer thing. And then for some reason, Tasha ends up giving Ricky her very expensive camera that she got from her dad, or at least I think it was her dad's expensive camera. She gives it to Ricky and says, if anything happens to this, you're off the paper. But she knows full well what's going to happen when she gives it to Ricky, because obviously he breaks it, right? She knows this when she hands it over, and she still says, if you break it, you're off the school newspaper. Why would you give him such an expensive, valuable, and expect him not to break it? Tasha, that's on you. Anyway, to get back at Tasha, Ricky has this ad in the school newspaper that he hopes that she doesn't see, saying like, calling all creeps, call Tasha after midnight at this number. But Tasha sees it, changes the number to Ricky's, and then he starts getting all of these messages and phone calls and people thrown at him saying, oh, when are we meeting? This is the creeps, like, when are we meeting and stuff like that. Turns out the main bullies are the creeps. They're kind of like these alien species that wants to colonize Earth. I mean, I found that a little bit of a weird twist, but at the same time I was still like, okay, I'm still interested. And then they want to put these like identity seeds in everyone's food at school so that everybody becomes a creep. And what's weird about these creeps, like, I did find them quite interesting and I thought their design was pretty weird. They look a bit like dinosaur lizards on the cover. I didn't put the page number down, but they slap tongues together as if they were high-fiving each other. And I'm like, honey, we don't call that high-fiving where I come from. Anyway, they think Ricky is their leader, and then they get Ricky to put some identity seeds in like the cookies at school, and then Ricky tries to stop everyone from eating them, but then he's like, oh, but I want revenge on everyone because they've been treating me like crap for so long, so I'm gonna let them eat it and let them become these monsters. That's essentially the story. Fortunately, I wasn't ever really infuriated by this one, which is how I rate Goosebumps books these days. I mean, this still gets a 2-star, because just I find it so forgettable and not really anything new and exciting. The whole revenge thing as well is very overdone in Goosebumps. Like, I want bullies to face consequences, don't get me wrong, but all it does, especially like, was it You Can't Scare Me? There's many of them where the main character is just so consumed with revenge, it takes away all of their kind of relatability and takes away any kind of empathy I have for them when they're just consumed with revenge the entire book. And in this one, there's no exception, especially at the end when he realizes, oh, if they become my slaves, life will be so much better for me. I'm just like, there's a better way for bullies to get their consequences, and I just feel like Goosebumps just misses the mark every single time with any kind of topic with bullying. Yeah, I'm gonna shut up about this one. Beware the Snowman started off so good. It was so good. It was more like a 4-star to begin with, and then it just dropped to a 3-star by the end of the book. It lost all of its potential after like the halfway point. We follow Jacqueline, who has lost her parents, and she lives with her Aunt Greta in this really like snowy wilderness kind of village. And there are these like weird snowmen that are outside people's houses. Why? Why is this happening? Why do people do this? Which honestly I found really quite creepy and atmospheric. Jacqueline wants to know why, and they're talking about this legend of this like snowman monster, and there was like this kind of rhyme that Jacqueline's mother said to Jacqueline about like beware the snowman. Yeah, there is a snowman monster that lives on top of the mountain. Jacqueline ends up finding it. The snowman says, I'm actually your father. I was cursed by your aunt to be a snowman. Free me, essentially. And then Aunt Greta comes, and honestly, like, I was kind of thinking, okay, maybe this is like another one of those sorcerer turned them into something kind of stories, which happens more often than not than Goosebumps these days. So I was expecting that twist to be like, okay, right, whatever. But then I was actually pleasantly surprised that it turned out that it wasn't that. And it wasn't actually Aunt Greta that cursed him. This snowman manipulated Jacqueline to free him, and he becomes like this big monster, and you know, now Jacqueline's freed him. It's like, oh my gosh. But then Jacqueline's real dad comes along with an army of snowmen and defeat the monster. And I'm just like, okay, this took a really bizarre turn. I genuinely thought this was going in such a great direction. I'm so disappointed by the way it turned out. And why is it that when we have a confrontation in a Goosebumps book, the main characters never seem to actually defeat the monster? It always seems to be rather circumstantial, or some kind of, is it Deus Ex Machina? Something happens, just comes out of nowhere, that saves the main character. And the main character had no agency in it whatsoever. And I just felt like, well, what was the point? We followed this main character in this wilderness, and I kind of did enjoy Jacqueline's story because, you know, she had lost her parents. We have a little bit of exploration of grief, which was rather mature for a Goosebumps book. I liked that, and I thought, oh god, this is going to be like so good. But no. But this was saved a bit by the atmosphere at the beginning of it, so yeah, definitely 3-star. And again, not really much more to say about that one, thank the Lord. It's the last day of September, and I have finished 6 more Goosebumps books, and I only have 5 more to go. Oh god. Gosh, this has been a journey. Ew, is that gum? I just realised there's something nasty on the front of my How I Learned to Fly book, and it looks like gum. How did I not realise that before? I must have just thought it was part of the cover. Speaking of How I Learned to Fly, How I Learned to Fly follows Jack and Wilson. Jack is the main character and Wilson is like his best friend, but honestly I don't know why, because Wilson loves to show Jack up in absolutely everything he does. Wilson always has to be better. It kind of gave me You Can't Scare Me vibes with that. Both boys, Jack and Wilson, are clamoring for the attention of Mia, and honestly this book should be named How I Learned to Toxic Masculinity. Toxic Masculinity from page 1. This book is essentially about 2 boys having a pissing contest with one another, and I did sympathise with Jack to begin with. He got really like arrogant and rather creepy himself, because yeah, Jack just can't live up to Wilson. Wilson is always being better at him than everything, absolutely everything. And then at a birthday party, Jack runs away, and it's like Mia's birthday party. He has the biggest crush on her, but so does Wilson. Jack runs away. He finds a book called Flying Lessons, and he does actually get flying lessons from it. He learns how to fly from it. But then what I don't understand is how Wilson saw that, because we end up finding out that Wilson stole the book from Jack, where Jack left it in a mattress in the garage, which I genuinely don't know how Wilson knew that. Like, was he constantly watching Jack at every minute? Like, I don't understand how that happened. But Wilson can fly as well, and turns out Wilson's better at flying than Jack is. This one snowballed into something that was really, really bizarre, because then like scientists find out and they want to like study Jack, and then Wilson ends up setting them up for like this big competition, like flying competition that gets them famous, but Jack doesn't want the fame, but Wilson does. So Jack pretends that he can't fly anymore, and then Wilson ends up getting the most popular and all of that. And I don't know. I genuinely don't know with this one. It felt like so many different things happening. Like, this book didn't know what it wanted to be. Yeah, it kind of also gave me, what was that one called? Egg Monsters from Mars. It gave me a little bit of vibes from that as well. But I didn't like the characters at all. Like, Wilson was a really awful friend, and like, I just don't know why he's friends with him. Jack as well. Jack got really creepy because Mia wanted to learn how to fly herself, and Jack is like, no, you can't can't do that, I'm not going to teach you. But then when he thinks, oh, if I teach her, then she will fall in love with me, she will be obsessed with me, and I will be like her knight in shining armor kind of thing, that's when it got like a little bit creepy. And again, I know he's saying the 12, like they don't understand or whatever, but like genuinely no. I gave this one 2 stars because there was nothing special about it. It was very average. Yeah, it just... yeah. This is going to be a recurring theme of these reviews now. We're going into the final run. Chicken is the book that I mentioned at the start about my primary school teacher who would do the voices and things, and he would read out some Goosebumps chapters in form class, and that would set us off for the rest of the day because we'd have this story and it was so good. But Chicken was the one that I remember him reading, and as soon as I started reading this and I got to a lot of the moments, they all came flooding back to me. My memory is rather shocking, but I could remember my primary school teacher doing the clucking noises because there's... okay, story time. Crystal and Cole are brother and sister. They live in Goshen Falls? Goshen Falls. All the place names blur into one at this point as well. But they live in Goshen Falls, and there is this woman called Vanessa who lives alone, and she has a black cat, which makes her automatically a witch. Any R.L. Stine book, any woman who lives on their own and has a cat is a witch. Like, that's just the going stereotype. Cole and Crystal, I mean, Cole's a little shit, and he does a lot of like pranks and stuff, and Crystal's like, no, don't do that, but she doesn't do anything to stop him. And then they end up running into Vanessa outside and make her drop her groceries. They run away without apologizing, and then Vanessa points at them and says chicken. This is so bizarre. Like, this is just like, what am I even talking about? So yeah, they start turning into chickens, and it gave me like my Hairiest Adventure vibes too, because we had this whole story where they're slowly turning into chickens. Well, I remember, you know, Cole getting feathers, Crystal helps them pluck them off, and her nose or mouth goes into a beak, and you know, these things kind of like slowly happen, and they're realizing what's happening, and they're being cursed, and that was all fine. That was all interesting. There would be times when they would talk and they would cluck like every 3 words. It is probably supposed to be a little bit funny, but I don't know, like I was laughing, but laughing at it, not with it. And I remember my primary school teacher doing that and making us laugh. You know what, I got like a little soft spot for it because of that reason. Cole and Crystal end up bringing into Vanessa's house. They steal a book, realize the book's just a cooking book, so they come back to steal another book. They find the incantation, they try and reverse it, but they make themselves a huge chicken and then a little chicken. Vanessa comes, and Crystal uses a typewriter to apologize essentially, and I'm just like, this is just so bizarre, like, okay. Like, and honestly, she's like a tiny chick. Would a chick really have that power to, you know, do all the typewriter stuff? But also not just that, does Vanessa have the patience to just stand there and watch as this chick is going from literally one letter to another letter? How long would that have taken? Vanessa should have just blasted them to bits, to be honest. Yeah, Vanessa's like, oh, you know what, you apologized and it was sincere, you know, now I'm going to turn you back, which honestly is a great message. Like, that's a great moral to have, is to, you know, apologize and own up to your mistakes and, you know, have good manners essentially. And then Cole burps really loudly and Crystal laughs, and then Vanessa curses them, pig. Honestly, it's so ridiculous. It is honestly ridiculous. But I guess maybe that was the point. This one's still getting 2 stars. It is still one of the worst Goosebumps books. It just, any kind of tension, any kind of atmosphere is eliminated with a lot of the silly, ridiculous things that happen in it. And also, I was just on Vanessa's side the entire time. These kids terrorized Vanessa. Like, they were pouring stuff into her letterbox and things. Like, Vanessa, I wouldn't mind if you cursed every single child in that town to be a chicken. More power to you, girl. Don't Go to Sleep is a very misleading book. Like, look at that cover. You would think that the main character would be lying in bed and maybe there was a monster under the bed or something. Absolutely not. Not like that at all. This was more like science fiction, almost a little Marvel-like. And I'm only saying that because I just watched some of the What If episodes on Disney Plus, and it has all of the stuff to do with like the multiverse and things. And this one kind of similar-ish. It has like a multiverse. So Matt, he is the youngest of siblings. His siblings bully him obsessively. I get it, siblings bully one another and stuff, but genuinely I think we've only ever had one really positive sibling relationship in 54 books. Just one, and that was The Night in Terror Tower. Maybe a couple more, but I think that is the only one that stands out where they've actually been supportive of one another pretty much from the beginning. So we have yet another one where siblings just constantly bully one another, and Matt wants the spare room because it's bigger than his bedroom, and his mom's like, no, you can't do that, you can't stay in that room and whatever. And plus his mom is awful. Again, another awful adult character. You won't listen to the things he says when he says that he's being bullied by his siblings. Like, parents, just listen to your kids. Matt sneaks into the spare bedroom and sleeps in it anyway, and somehow through sleeping in that bedroom, he rips open the fabric of time or whatever, and goes to like different like multiverse kind of things. He sleeps, and then when he wakes up, he's in a different kind of like universe almost. This was also really bizarre, but there are reality police, which is led by a 12-year-old. And the reality police are called Bruce and Wayne. I mean, Batman, anyone? But anyway, that didn't even really amount to anything anyway. It was just a random subplot that came to nothing. Matt ends up waking up and like he's part of a circus in one kind of reality, and he becomes a squirrel in another. And again, another one that really pissed me off was when he woke up on a tree branch and he was obese. And again, we had that whole scenario play out where there is a lot of fat phobia, and we had that whole, you know, being fat as a negative in the Goosebumps series. We still haven't shied away from it. It's 54 books in. So all of those reasons together, this gets a 2-star because I honestly was expecting something totally different. It was so bizarre, so weird. Didn't really like it. Nothing scary about it. Even when Matt turns into like this monster in one of the realities, like that again felt like Monster Blood 2, or was it 3, where the main character becomes big. But not the worst in the batch of books that I'm talking about. Okay, The Blob That Ate Everyone kind of redeemed this little section just very slightly. This does get 3 stars, which is better than the books that I've read in this update, but it was still missed opportunity after missed opportunity in this one. We follow Zaki, who gets a typewriter. The things he types becomes real, or, you know, the story that he's writing, because he loves writing horror stories and things. Whatever he writes comes to reality. I like the atmosphere of that, which is probably one of the best parts about this book, is kind of the atmosphere as he's writing. He's like, oh, it's a dark and stormy night, and then suddenly everything's dark and stormy, and like there's a knock at the door, but there is a knock at the door, but there's no one there, kind of thing. Like, stuff like that was really good. I will say, like, the plot's not original or anything. I do believe I've seen it done to death with the whole writing something down and it becomes real. Almost a little bit like Attack of the Mutant, but not the same, obviously. It just totally let me down by the end of it because, well, I mean, Zaki writes that the Blob is in town and he's eating everyone, and then eventually that does happen. In the confrontation with this Blob monster, all Zaki has to do is close his eyes and wish for it to go away. And it happens, that's what happens, the monster just disappears. But then we also get like this kind of twist ending where it turns out that it's actually a Blob monster that's writing Zaki's story, so all of this is like the Blob monster's doing, and then another Blob monster's like, oh, you shouldn't make it so everybody is eating at the end, so the Blob monster's like, okay. And I'm just like, that again came up so left field, and I mean, part of me liked it because I was like, okay, that's a little bit different. But then I'm also like, well, that just like eliminates everything that happened in the story, really, and it makes it so redundant that I just, at the end of it, I was just like, oh, is that the way that it's going to be wrapped up, really? I don't know, like, it just felt like the whole entire plot of this book was made redundant by it. I'm repeating myself, but I didn't really like it all that much, but it was still a little bit better than the other ones, mainly because of atmosphere, and it was a little bit spookier, but not really. So yeah, this one got 3 stars, and it's still not fantastic. The Curse of Camp Cold Lake is what, like the 4th camp story in the Goosebumps original series, and honestly they just don't get any better, and I really didn't like this one either, so this one gets another 2-star. It had potential because I do like ghost stories, and again, like, camps do still scare me. I just couldn't get on board, mainly because firstly we're introduced to Sarah, who's actually called Sarah Maas, like Sarah J Maas, like, okay. Like, I thought that was a little bit interesting. Again, characters are so insufferable. Even Sarah, like, Sarah, she is very spoiled. She wants things to go her way, and so when she comes to this camp, you know, the bunkmates, or like her campmates, bunkmates, whatever, they've picked all the good beds, like Sarah complains, blah blah blah, and like they kind of bully her, and she has her own back and things. By the end of it, you'll just realize like how silly the story is. It's just so petty, which I guess is kind of the point almost, because a lot of camps and a lot of the drama and things that happen to camps are rather petty. But again, camp counselors are depicted so awfully. They're so neglectful again. Anyway, so Sarah's at this camp and she starts seeing this ghost called Della, and Della wants her to be her friend forever. So Sarah tries to get away and nobody believes her, kind of thing, and blah blah blah. And then we have like a confrontation at the end where Brianna, she kind of saves Sarah, but it turns out Brianna was dead all along herself and she wants Sarah to be her friend forever. That doesn't make any sense. Nobody could see Della, right? She's a ghost. She died during camp, and yeah, nobody can see her who are alive. So Brianna has been part of the story since the beginning, and people have high-fived her, they've interacted with her, she's been, you know, a camp campmate of Sarah's for, like, since the beginning, essentially. And I don't understand why people can not see Della but can see Brianna and interact with her. Like, I feel like that was a huge plot hole. I think what happened was R.L. Stine was writing this book. He got to the end where Brianna saved Sarah from Della, and then he realised, oh, I still need a plot twist. Oh, I know, I'll have Brianna be dead. And there was just like no planning towards that whatsoever, because it just doesn't make any sense with the rules of this world itself. Like, people can't see ghosts apart from Sarah. So why can then everyone see Brianna, and why can she interact with everyone? It just doesn't make sense. There was also this part that really made me dislike Sarah so much, and that was when Sarah was trying to get everyone to feel sorry for her. So she started to pretend to drown. Like, she was like, okay, how can I make people feel sorry for me? I know, I'll pretend to drown, and then everyone will actually like me. And I just didn't understand that. Like, at that point, she had been rather insufferable by dropping people in it, and she wanted Jan to join her on this kayak thing or whatever on the rowboat, and Jan didn't want to do it, so Sarah went to Camp Camasa and went, I want Jan to do this, and like, we need to do it together because of the buddy system or whatever. And then Jan is forced to do it, and I'm just like, the girl said no. And then the fact that she tries to gain sympathy by pretending to drown is just so unlikable. I just didn't like Sarah whatsoever. Why can't we have really likable, strong characters in the Goosebumps series anymore? We started out that way. We did have some in the early books, and we have had some every now and then since, but it just seems more often than not the characters are some of the worst of the series. And just give me good characters to follow. Is that too much to ask for? And then the last one in this update is My Best Friend is Invisible, and this one is getting a 1 star. This one is another 1-star book. I haven't given very many 1 stars, but honestly, this one, it just, again, I can't explain it. This one follows Sammy, who loves science fiction, and his parents are scientists, so it really annoys them. What happens is that he wants to explore this haunted house with his friend. They end up finding out that there is not exactly a ghost, but an invisible boy, and all this invisible boy wants is a friend. And then he just ends up like making trouble for Sammy. And then we have this plot twist at the end where it turns out that Brent, who is the invisible boy, is actually a human boy that was made invisible. And the characters in this, the main characters in this, are the monsters. So we have that exact kind of twist ending we've had in like Welcome to Camp Nightmare, we had it in The Girl Who Cried Monster. So many of these books now where the twist ending happens to be like the main characters or the characters you didn't realise was something else, you know? If they had been alluded to a little bit earlier, I probably would have liked it more, but the fact that we've seen it over and over again, and this had like little to no, in fact, I don't think it had any indication that that's where it was going. And again, I just think it's the fact that R.L. Stine thinks, oh, I need a plot twist at the end, I'll quickly write something up that I haven't even alluded to because I didn't plan this one. Like, he hasn't planned a lot of them, I don't think. But again, it's just nothing really scary happens in this one at all. There's only 5 more to go. There's only 5 more to go. Literally nothing likable about this. Main character, whiny, didn't like him. I just didn't like the plot. I just felt like it didn't really have a plot. It was rather boring. And usually even the bad Goosebumps books are entertaining at least. I just didn't feel entertained by this. There wasn't even that much humour. In fact, I can't even remember laughing at this at all. Even in a, you know, ironic sense, like Chicken. But yeah, I just think this is probably the most boring Goosebumps book I've read. There's a few that could take that title. I'm almost at the end of the series and almost at the end of this vlog. Oh God, I am literally so excited. I've never been more excited in my life. I'm so excited. Like, I have no hope for any of them. The fact there's another Monster Blood one at the end there really does scare me. But I know it'll be the end, so I don't even mind, honestly. And it's quite cold. So I've got my little throw here. It's dark outside. It's fab. I'm almost done. 5 more to go. So I've got my coffee there on the table, ready to go. Come on, let's do this. Let's finish off Goosebumps. I am never reading Goosebumps again. I kid. I do kid. I still love... Okay, I'm going to do a proper wrap-up at the end of like Goosebumps in general and my feelings about the series as an adult, how my thoughts on the series has changed and evolved over time, and all of that. I'll do that at the end. I've still got 5 more books to talk about. The final 5 books that I read. Oh God, I'm so happy it's done. So happy it's done. I thought I would film the final update in front of, you know, my Goosebumps little bit here like I did at the very start of the vlog. So we're coming full circle. We are starting here and we are ending here. Deep Trouble 2 is the sequel to Deep Trouble, which we all know I didn't really enjoy. I thought it was a really, well, rather ridiculous Goosebumps book because it wasn't scary at all. It was more of an adventure. Deep Trouble 2 was slightly better than Deep Trouble, but it still gets a 2-star from me. There were still a lot of things that I wasn't enjoying. I will say that the story of this makes me think of that Pokemon episode where they go to like an island of giant Pokemon, and I love that episode of Pokemon. So I could say that in this, and I kind of liked it a little bit because of that. We follow the same characters from Deep Trouble. We follow Billy and Sheena, and we also have Dr. D, or Dr. Deep in full. But there are these giant fish that seem to crop up, and some of that was a little bit, well, scary-ish, because I think the idea of, you know, huge fish, huge, like, seagulls as well, I don't know why, but seagulls were giant as well, huge dolphins. It just seemed to be a little bit creepy, so I'll give it that. However, I think the scenes in the very first Deep Trouble, like just the bits with the shark, because there were a couple of really scary bits in the first Deep Trouble that I really enjoyed, so the shark bits were the most terrifying bits, even though they weren't explored very well, it was still like the scariest part of the first one. So we didn't really get anything that scary in this one, but yeah, just the idea of it was quite scary. But we do have this storyline of, I don't know how they keep doing this, but we have the storyline of these like 3 men who have been experimenting by putting some kind of liquid or growing solution in the plankton that the fish eat, which makes them grow bigger so that they can sell the big fish so that more people will be able to eat or whatever like that. I don't know. Honestly, it's very convoluted, which a lot of Goosebumps books are. They try and force Billy and Sheena and Dr. D to have this and or like walk the plank, essentially. They escape to an island and then they come back to the ship for some reason or another. They're brought back by a giant dolphin. Like, I don't know how the dolphin knows where to go and to take them back to this place. Like, a lot of stuff doesn't make sense. And then we have the end, and I kind of liked the twist, kind of didn't. So Billy ends up like, pretending he took the vial, which turns you into a fish. And he uses a pillow to pretend that he was a fish. Like, again, it went over my head. I didn't understand it. But then Billy had also swapped a vial so that when the bad guys drink it, they would turn into fish. So, like, we had that kind of twist bit happening where we thought Billy was going to be the one to turn into a fish, but it turns out the bad guys do. So that was all good and fine and whatever. It made sense in a way because Billy had said earlier on that he was going to get his own back on Sheena by putting a prank on her, and that was kind of like how he did it. He swapped the vials over to do like this prank on Sheena. Again, I don't know how, I don't know why, but it happened. And then Sheena drinks from the vial and she's like, oh, I wonder if this was the right one. And then her fate is left up in the air. Did she turn into a fish? I don't know. Well, one, I don't know why Sheena would drink from a vial after what it's happened. Whether they're good vials or bad vials, I would just throw them all overboard. Or actually probably not, because that might make more damage. I would bury that and, you know, not drink from a vial. I don't know, that's just what common sense tells me to do. But yeah, overall, 2 stars. I preferred it to the first Deep Trouble because it had a little bit more going on. The giant fish and stuff were a little spooky. It was fine. It's not as exhausting as Monster Blood, so that's good. So yeah, that's all I can say about this one. The Haunted School was actually extremely good. I really enjoyed The Haunted School, and I had given up on Goosebumps at this point. I just thought, oh, the last 5 books I'm going to read are going to be god-awful, don't care about any of them. So I went in with that mindset, and I was so pleasantly surprised at how good this one was. It was actually really creepy, and like for the first time in forever, it actually scared me a little bit. I was like, oh, okay, like this is actually quite scary. So this one follows Tommy, and at school, he comes across this classroom that's like class of 1947, I think it was. And in this classroom, there's like these statues of the kids who went missing after a Mr. or like a Dr. Chameleon had taken a photo of them, and they just suddenly disappeared, never to be found again. So that was like a really creepy story. I like really enjoyed the idea of that. And then later on, Tommy and his friend Ben end up accidentally stumbling across like a grey world kind of thing that's hidden in the school, and that is where Dr. Chameleon had sent the kids when he took the photo of them. And there were like, I think only 2 of those kids were left and in this grey world, so the rest of the kids were like outside, and they were like more animal-like, and they were, you know, trying to get Ben and Tommy. So the 2 kids that were left inside the school from, you know, all those years ago, try and help them. And just like the whole grey world aspect of it was really imaginative, and I really enjoyed that idea of being transported from like this photo kind of of thing. Even though they're not trapped in a photo, it's like an actual like world. And when they try and go outside of this world, yes, it's all there, but all of the other kids, after all of these years, they've lost all colour. And it just, I love the idea of it. It was so good. And then, you know, things happen, things get a little bit intense. And then Talia, who was a character who had like grey eyes, you realise that she escaped like years and years ago. So like she probably knows how to do it. And I mean, it's very convenient how Talia, after all of these years of trying to get back to the grey world to save her friends, she manages to find out how to do it when we have Ben and Tommy trapped there. So that was convenient, but I'm going to overlook it because it's not often I get to really enjoy a Goosebumps book. Talia ends up helping Ben and Tommy escape. Like, I love the ending of this one. This was actually a great ending. So Ben and Tommy, they are like kind of pushed into this class photo that they're going to be taking. So then Mrs. Borden was like, we want everyone who worked on the dance in the photo. She turned to the photographer behind his camera. Okay, Mr. Chameleon, she called. You can take the shot now. And then Tommy says, Mr. Who? I cried, no, wait. Flash. And like, that's how it ends. And I was like, that's actually such a good ending. So like, he's just managed to escape the grey world, and suddenly like he's thrust into this class photo, or like the photo for the dance class, and yeah, it was such a good ending. Like finally, I was like, yes, finally, this is a really, really good one. So yeah, 4 stars I'm giving this one, and I haven't given a 4-star like in nearly 30 books. The last one was A Shocker on Shock Street, I believe, and I'm just like, yes, I love the atmosphere, I love the vibe, the characters were great. Yeah, I just enjoyed it. Story, great. Writing was actually really good. Plot, fantastic. Plot twist, fantastic. Yeah, I just loved it. Werewolf Skin I couldn't quite hit the heights of, you know, the Haunted School there, but it was still a decent read, and I'm giving this one 3 stars. This one is a 3-star read. I probably prefer, like, there've been a couple of werewolf ones now. I think I still prefer The Werewolf of Fever Swamp. This one followed Alex, who has to go and live with his aunt and uncle for 2 weeks, so he joins a school there and things, but his aunt and uncle have this rule: don't bother the neighbours. Like, the neighbours live in this really run-down house that's awful, like, don't bother them, they will phone the police, and then also don't go in the woods at night. You know, obviously, what's going to happen? Alex is going to do both of those things. So Alex also loves photography, and he has, like, howling and stuff, so he does, like, go into the woods every now and then. I liked Alex as the main character. Obviously, it wasn't the smartest decision to keep going out in the woods and that, but there was a moment where he saved, like, this baby deer, and I was like, you know what, after reading so many insufferable Goosebumps characters, it's really nice to see, like, a selfless and rather brave Goosebumps character. Like, he was actually a really heroic, really nice to follow main character, so I enjoyed it for that reason. He also meets Hannah, who lives in this town as well, called Wolf Creek, of course, so on the nose. So he ends up, like, convincing Hannah to, like, join him and stuff. He escapes. Like, his aunt and uncle, like, lock him up in his room and stuff, but he ends up escaping, and I knew something off would be about the aunt and uncle. Like, I knew it. And Hannah also finds out that, oh, they're werewolves, you know, the aunt and uncle are werewolves. That's the plot twist. I kind of saw that coming, but, you know, I'm not 100% mad about it. But what I did like about this is how it kind of reinvented the werewolf thing a little bit. Like, I thought it was rather imaginative. So the werewolf, they shed the skin, they keep it in the house, and then they put it on, you know, on a night time so that they can go about and do their business, I guess, and then they take it off before daylight comes up and whatever. But they have to put this werewolf skin on, otherwise it would hurt them. So Hannah has the idea of her and Alex putting on this werewolf skin to lift the curse from the aunt and uncle. So they do that. The aunt and uncle are in pain for a bit, but then they're like, okay, you've saved us. We are now not cursed. Easy as that, right? And then at the end, and I don't understand this still, but Alex goes into the house to put the werewolf skins there, and then he sees another werewolf skin, a spare one, and then suddenly Hannah turns out to be a werewolf as well. And I don't understand, like, how that works. Because wouldn't she have supposed to be in pain or whatever? Like, I just don't understand how that works. It didn't make any sense reading it and looking back on it. Like, I can't explain it. And also, she does bite him at the end too. Like, that's how it ends. He gets bitten in the chest. I mean, fair enough. It's a really exciting ending, a bit of a brutal ending. Did like how it was just at least trying to be imaginative and try to be a little bit different to the Werewolf of Fever Swamp. I appreciate it for that. That is some positive from this one as well, before we go into the last two, which do frustrate me a lot. The penultimate Goosebumps book, I Live in Your Basement. So hard to explain. So hard, because I could not follow along for half of it. I genuinely couldn't. I tried. And then something happened at the end that again made me think, like, what? So I Live in Your Basement, it is a 2-star. After, you know, Haunted School was 4, and then Werewolf Skin was 3, and now this one's a 2. Wait until you see the rating for the last one, that's what I'm saying. I Live in Your Basement, 2 stars, and it follows Marco, who gets hit in the head with a baseball or whatever, and then he gets a phone call or something from someone that lives in his basement called Keith. Keith keeps appearing to him. Marco keeps falling asleep. He keeps saying things. He sees Gwynnie, who is his, well, not exactly his friend, because she's kind of horrible to him sometimes, but she does come and apologize to him, which was nice. But she turns herself inside out, which was a really gross visual. He has loads of different visions and stuff. Is he awake? Is he not? There's all these questions. But I'm at that point with Goosebumps where I'm sick of dreams and I'm sick of things turning out to be a dream. So this entire book being just essentially what's real, what's not kind of vibe, I didn't like it. Because I just wanted it to be bloody real. I just wanted things to at least make a little bit sense, because not a lot of it made sense. Especially the plot twist. The twist at the end turns out that all along it's Keith. It was the monster that lives in his basement. It was Keith who was having these kind of visions or dreams. I cannot understand this book. I really can't. Try as I might. It just got so convoluted. That whole plot twist at the end as well, with it actually being the monster's reality rather than the human's reality or the main character's reality, again, has been done to death. And the plot just went absolutely nowhere for those reasons. So I was just again, another really pointless book. I really did think I would like this one, but just because it was a little bit creepy saying oh, I live in your basement and whatever, and he's never heard of Keith before. Okay, that is a little bit scary, but again, it's the execution. The execution on these books are just so lackluster for most of them. So unfortunately, I didn't really like it as much. I will say the overprotective mother of Marco, that was really nice to say, because a lot of parents are neglectful and ignorant in the Goosebumps series, but the mother in this, even though she was very overprotective and rather overbearing, it was at least a more positive portrayal of parents in the Goosebumps series, rather than having one that's just never listens to the kid, never believes them. At least in this one, she was there and she wasn't being ignorant. Yeah, as a penultimate book, I was expecting more. And it just didn't deliver, unfortunately. Finally, the very last book. I should be happy about this, but honestly, this was another really rubbish book in the Monster Blood series, which I have not liked this entire time. The very last Goosebumps book, number 62, Monster Blood 4, is a 1 star. This one, after the whole peak of the haunted school, it just went straight back down to the bottom of the barrel. Monster Blood 4 follows the same characters from the first 3 Monster Blood, and they never learn. Again, they just do not learn. I am getting fed up. We also still have Kermit, who is Evan's younger cousin, and Conan, who is the bully. At this point, just let these characters get eaten by this Monster Blood. I don't give a shit. It starts off pretty much very the same as Monster Blood 3, at least I think it was the 3rd one, where Evan is bullied by Conan, and then Kermit ends up telling his mum a lie about Evan to do with the bullying, and gets Evan in trouble. Again, why? This little kid, why? He is honestly the worst character in Goosebumps. He is the Scrappy-Doo of Goosebumps. And Andy as well is so infuriating. So you've just done 3 Monster Bloods, Andy. Why are you bringing more Monster Blood? And this time it's blue. Wow, you've changed the colour. So original. So this blue Monster Blood escapes again, gets attached to the dog. The dog runs to the playground, and the monsters just end up eating themselves. So again, the monsters defeat themselves. Evan, Andy, Kermit, even the dog don't even have to do anything. The monsters just defeat themselves. I'm sick of that. I'm sick of Monster Blood. I really am. Why did we have to end on this? Why did there have to be 4 Monster Blood books? And why did all of them have to be pretty much the same? Why did all of them have to follow the same characters? If they had changed the characters of each Monster Blood, I would have understood. I would have probably enjoyed them more. But the fact that we have 4 occasions, well actually 3, because obviously in Monster Blood 1, Evan and Andy don't know what's going on, but in Monster Blood 2, 3 and 4, it's unforgivable. Why? Why do you keep, and where does Andy keep getting this Monster Blood from? Surely she knows by now that it just causes absolute chaos. It's a shame, because I was genuinely, after the haunted school, thinking, this is getting better. By the end, we're getting better. But no, honestly, I don't think there's anything else really to say about this book, because I was just so excited to finish it, even though it was getting me angry again. I was I'm not that angry because I'm almost done. And yeah, it's the last one, and I'm honestly so happy about that. Yeah, I just wish we had have ended on a high. I do. I wish we had have ended on a high and not a bum note. Monster Blood 4 was not it, and it's one of the worst Goosebumps books in the series. 100%. I couldn't even enjoy the storyline. I mentioned this before, even some of the bad Goosebumps books are entertaining at least. This one just wasn't. I was more mad than anything else. I really hate the characters in the Monster Blood series, Evan, Andy, Kermit, and Conan. I can't. And I'm so glad I never ever have to read the Monster Blood series again, ever. So that is all 62 Goosebumps books read, and it was at the cost of my sanity. Just clarification, I know the Goosebumps books are for kids. I know they are a kids series, they were written in the 90s, it hasn't really aged well, and yeah, like all of that is like a fair point. I will say that I feel like a lot of the Goosebumps books do insult a lot of kids' intelligence. Like, you might think, oh, it's just a kid's book, it can be ridiculous, it can be silly, it can be all of this, it doesn't have to make sense. There are kids' books that do make sense, there are kids' books that are fantastically written. Just because it's a kids' book doesn't mean the quality has to be lower. That isn't a thing. Middle grade is fantastic literature. Middle grade books for kids should be well written, they should be, you know, fantastic and things. So, like, saying that, oh, they're only kids' books, you know, they don't have to make sense, whatever. I don't like that argument, because that is also insulting an entire age range of books. Kids are smarter than that. Don't underestimate kids. Don't think that just because they're kids that they deserve to have garbage, essentially. So, like, just, yeah. So that argument to me is redundant. Don't try and make that argument with me. I will say, give kids more credit. Give kids more credit. There are some fantastic Goosebumps books, of course, but judging from the stats from what I've read and things, and I do read a lot of children's books, I read a lot of middle grade, and most middle grades are my favourite books of all time. Most children's books are my favourite books of all time, so it's not like I'm just reading well outside of my comfort zone, or I know I'm reading something that wasn't written for me as an adult. That's just my take on it, and you can agree, you can disagree, you can do whatever, it's absolutely fine. I will again say as well that Goosebumps was my childhood, and nothing changes that. Like, not even me criticizing most of the Goosebumps books changes that. It's still near and dear to my heart. It's still one of my favourite series of all time, book series of all time. I will always thank R.L. Stine for really making me read when I was a kid. Like, back in the 90s, I have so many great memories of going to the store to pick Goosebumps books up, reading them for like hours in bed, or just like trying to read as much as I could when I was a kid, and it was mainly due to Goosebumps. So I know I've been negative a lot, but I do still acknowledge that, and that will never change. And I do know and acknowledge that kids will pick up Goosebumps for the first time today, and that might be their way into reading, and honestly, that's fantastic. Again though, there are a lot of great middle grades out there, there are great children's books out there. Yeah, I'm still so glad I did it, because I've had this on my mind for the past 2 years, and I know I would not rest until it was done, and now it's done. Oh my god, the relief, the elevation, the weight that's been lifted off my shoulders. Oh, it's incredible. It was worth going through all 62 of those books to get this feeling that I'm feeling right now. I'm never picking up another Goosebumps book again, at least not from the original series, unless I was rereading one of my favourites, because saying that, there were some really good Goosebumps books still, but most of them genuinely were not worth it. They were not good books. So I'm not going to go through what my favourite Goosebumps books were and least favourite Goosebumps books were, or like do a ranking in this video, because this video is already like over 7 hours long in raw footage, so I need to cut that right down. So I'm going to do a separate video ranking all my Goosebumps books. I might do the Goosebumps Series 2000 series later on, and maybe other Goosebumps series, because I know none of them reach 62 books. Like, 62 books was ridiculous to try and read in 1 month, and honestly, like, it was a chore. And I do remember liking some of the Series 2000 books, so I feel like they probably are better than the original series. So I'm just, yeah, I mean, saying that though might not happen for a while, but it potentially could happen. So I wouldn't rule it out, but also I need a break. I need a break from Goosebumps. Oh gosh, I'm gonna celebrate. I think I'm gonna pop open a bottle of wine or something and just be like, it's done. Still gotta edit all of this, so there's still a part of me that's like, it's not done, but at least the books are read. The books are read, I can move on a little bit with my life and never have to read the original Goosebumps series again. So I'm happy. If you made it this far, honestly, amazing. Thank you so much for watching. And if you do enjoy, like, please do leave a like to show your support. That would mean the world to me. And subscribe if you haven't already to see future content from me. And I do have links in my description box for my Patreon, for, you know, Twitter, Instagram, all my social media links down there as well. Leave comments down below. Let me know your thoughts on the Goosebumps books. Let me know your thoughts on my thoughts. Like, do you agree? Do you disagree? Let's talk. Let's chat. But anyway, I do hope you still enjoyed the video, and don't forget to leave that like if you did. That's it. I hope I see you in the next video. Oh my god. Whew. I hope you enjoyed that vlog and that you weren't too scared. It's time for me to say goodbye. Have a scary night, everyone.